Progressive Talk station, 820 AM WCPT Willow Springs and 92.5 WCPT FM DeKalb, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
The message that it's perfectly normal to conspire with a hostile foreign government while it attacks and invades American sovereignty, or whether it's that the ACA is imploding, the pro-Trump loyalists will believe anything they're told. We can fact-check all we want. It simply doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. Reality doesn't matter. And for Trump and his disciples, words have no meaning.
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
This is WCPT's Art of the City. We let you know what's happening in the theater, music, and visual arts. Coming up on Friday, September 22nd from 6 to 9 p.m., the Matthew Rockman Gallery at 1659 West Chicago Avenue presents As We Enter New Plains, a new exhibition featuring sculptures by Ruth Isis Migdal and paintings by Nicholas Creefall. Both artists' works challenge us to revisit initial perceptions about our surroundings and bodies. Creefall revisits the mysterious ways of the natural world through multi-layered investigations into the sublime and terrifying. Multifarious thickness and complex layering of paint add startling magnitude, the kind arising from a considered glance. Migdal's intimate relationship with the female body is a testament to the time spent with exploring form and substance. Her inquiries create a new and empowered language about the body without succumbing it to exploitation. For more information, go to MatthewRockman.com.
Hearing loss affects 48 million Americans. In fact, 40% of people over age 65 have hearing loss. Untreated hearing loss can lead to social isolation, depression, and even an increased risk of falls. While hearing loss is isolating, it is not an isolated
okay
problem.
In the chat room? Sound okay?
Hearing loss not only affects the individual, but their family too.
Chat
The entire
room,
family may
can
struggle
you
to
hear
be
me?
heard or understood, leading to feelings of sadness and loneliness. Without the ability to communicate effectively, the entire family may lose the most important connections in their lives. Hearing loss can compromise relationships, but doesn't have to. Get a hearing test and obtain treatment if needed. Visit highhealthinnovations.com and hearingloss.org to learn more. A public service message from High Health Innovations, the Hearing Loss Association of America, and this station.
It began with 5 words. If not me, then who? The Travis Manion Foundation has taken those 5 words and grown them into a national movement. The Travis Manion Foundation is dedicated to assisting our nation's veterans, families of the fallen, and the next generation of young leaders. It's about remembering the sacrifices of all the men and women who've given their lives for this country and honoring their legacies through service in your own community. It's about adopting the motto, if not me, then who, and applying it to your daily lives like so many others have already done.
All these great things that we live in this beautiful country, it didn't happen because no one chose to serve. Serving should be like in your blood. If not me, then who?
From our 9/11 Heroes Run to putting character to action in your community, discover how you can honor the fallen by challenging the living. Get involved at travismanion.org.
30 seconds.
Cool.
Water. You rely on it daily. But what do you really know about it? There is so much more to H2O than you realize. Did you know that tap water provides us with a low-cost way to stay hydrated?
H1.50,
public health and fire
unstable
protection,
hydrogen,
and nearly every product that we use every day.
pair that links
the more
to
you
an
know about your
oxygen
H2O, the
molecule
more
to
there is to know.
stabilize its. All right, never
To
mind,
learn
no
more,
one's listening.
visit drinktap.org. This message is brought to you by the American Water Works Association and your local water provider.
Oh, that's nice of them. I appreciate it. Here we go.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
To do the vibes.
You know, you can be forgiven in the sort of volume of information and news that is being thrown at us at a very regular level for missing some of it, quite frankly. You can be forgiven for not being caught up at any particular time on what is exactly happening on a myriad of fronts, on a good deal of news stories, there are so many unfolding details and so much so many spinning plates in the air that it can be completely reasonable for you to think, I thought I was on top of this, and I have no idea where this has gone. I have no idea where in the world I'm going to end up, where the linchpin detail in this particular story is coming from. I have no idea if I'm 100% on any given story at any given time. Now, this is an ironic fact considering the idea that we have 24-hour news now. The one thing you would think would be normalized, I suppose, by the fact that we have a multiple 24-hour news channels is that you should be able at almost any time to turn on one of them and have every piece of information around a particular story sort of straightened out. That if you're missing some sort of detail, it should be available somewhere on the news. One would think, for Pete's sake, And in terms of the circumstance wherein you've got a story like the Russian story, for example, or a situation where you have what Trump is up to in any given moment, because it seems like, quite frankly, half the people in his cabinet don't know most of the time, much less the news, right? So the stunning part of all this, is that you really can't know. You really, honestly can't keep up with all the stuff. And so it's great that we have certain news outlets who seem to be hyper-focused on one particular story. Russia, the Russia story, Rachel Maddow has been doing terrific work on that. The kind of issues in St. Louis and the president's issues with his white supremacist tendencies, if you want to call them that. All of those elements are being handled. Chris Hayes is doing a great job on that. So everyone has their kind of bone to pick, as it were. And the president has multiple versions of Pravda that he gets to take advantage of on a fairly regular basis at this point. He's got Fox and Friends specifically, as lefty as the Shep Smiths of the world are. Fox and Friends makes up for it by genuinely having the president's back at every turn, and if anything, talking to him in terms of ways that it's almost as if they're talking to him through the television set, like Poltergeist, telling him to come into the light, as it were. And there's a particularly, there's almost a strategy to it that happened during the early part of the Trump campaign, wherein people knew this. People in the cabinet were even using the television set to talk to Donald Trump because they couldn't and these were people who were in his office regularly. Apparently, they would say something to his face and get nowhere. But then they would go on the TV and sit next to the Fox and Friends, and suddenly it entered his head like it was his own idea. They found this magical way to maneuver Donald Trump's brain using the television as their methodology. Okay, so, and this was a standard operating procedure for quite a while. And then General Kelly comes in, and in General Kelly coming in, he's going to straighten everything out. He's hired an assistant to his office that the people in the White House are referring to as Nurse Ratchet, because she is stopping them from having Insta meetings. It is last reported that Omarosa is threatening to, it looks like she's being fired because she can't get access to the president, and she keeps, I guess, trying. So she's very close to losing her job there, whatever that job may have been, other than flattery. I think a good portion of the White House staff at this point is simply on flattery detail. the favorable news package that the president was getting is now being directed by General Kelly. It exists, but it has mixed in with it directed stories to keep the president on track as a governing politician and not just as a showboat. It's having it seems a 50-50 success rate when it comes to the president. Half the time he's suddenly saying things that seem like he's paying attention to the prompter, and then the follow-up, he'll tweet ridiculously about any number of gripes that he has. And then the big story happens this week. One of the many big stories, but this one in particular shocked and surprised the world of Republicans. And it was the news that the president had made a deal. President Deal, who, if anything, Trump has been if Trump has been elected on two premises by his base and by anyone who voted for him, besides the fact that he's essentially a white nationalist by default. You can argue about whether he's a white nationalist in his heart or what have you. I just think he has an ick factor with people who are different from him that translates into racism if you happen to be one of those people. I don't think he's of the Richard Spencer ilk, because I don't think he thinks this much stuff through. I think he just wants to be liked very much. And don't even get me started on the defenses of he has this black friend or Ben Carson or Omarosa or whatever. That defense is faulty on all fronts. Does not hold up to scrutiny. There are many racists and bigots over the years who have managed a series of people that are in the group they propose to vilify and demonize, who have worked for them or have operated as sycophants for them. That's not surprising. It's not a defense. You're going to need a bigger one than that. That being put aside, like Trump himself has this clear, besides the white nationalist, we're going to stop the Mexicans and the Muslims from coming, and black people in the inner cities, Chicago, as a code word, are not American and they're very dangerous, and it's, white European culture, all that stuff. Put that aside for a second. If there were two branding elements that Trump got elected on, it was his ability to make deals and the idea that he fires people. You're fired. This is, his interminable catchphrase from The Apprentice being this idea that he's such a businessman, and the idea that, the throw the bums out idea and the anti-establishment fervor that was growing against government in general, the idea that you would have a guy who was good at firing people, right, was very appealing to a lot of people, especially who have this throw the bums out mentality or this anti-establishment further. It's why you ended up getting some people who were Bernie voters voting for him. It's why people just felt like a vote for him was to burn the whole thing down ultimately. And it was because this is the guy who's on the show who fires people. You fired all the time. Okay. We find out later, of course, that he didn't fire anybody on The Apprentice, that the producers picked who was going to go. He had almost no, if anything, if he said we should fire this person, they kept the person on the show longer for artificial tension, because that's what they do on reality shows. Sorry to burst your bubble. But the other one is that he hasn't fired anybody in his cabinet. He's always used other people to do it. Even in the circumstance that he's in the White House and he's firing people, he is doing it via other human beings. Rod Rosenstein in particular, when it comes to Comey, which is probably his biggest firing, he wrote this big letter where he was going to fire him. His lawyers talked him out of it, and ultimately he used this bank shot through the DOJ to fire Comey using their letter as cover. And then he couldn't let go of the credit once people said it was, something he should have done. So he covered his own ass by pretending that it was ultimately, his idea again, or basically expressing why he wanted to, right? And then, so the firing idea is nonsense. Kelly's been brooming people. Scaramucci fired people. This is a regular thing. The other thing is, this is a guy who knows how to make deals. And this week, boy, did he make a deal. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
You listen to this station because facts matter.
You don't know what I'm talking
about.
about.
Right now, you could save 30% MSRP on new Volkswagens at Hawk VW.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can always, just stick around. You'll learn. And Julie, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Lady B, I'm getting commercials. Can you cut them? Thank you, Billy. Lady B, can you drop commercials coming my way? Thank you. Appreciate it. Lovely. That's okay. That's okay. No problem. I'm just glad I can hear you. So half the time, on the one hand, I don't need them while I'm during break or whatever. But on the other hand, I'm like, at least I'm getting a signal, from Chicago. So thank you, Julie and Billy, for the super chat. Love that. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. Went to the Space and Rocket Center yesterday. I'm going again tomorrow. It's cool. There's a lot of neat stuff here. Yeah. People listening to AM are only getting one channel on the radio. Well, technically speaking, it's it's mono, so. Hey, is that better? Check. Check. Is this better because it's not mono anymore? Oh, yeah. Did it fix it? I hope so, yeah. Still left only. Damn it. I don't know quite why that is. Let's see. All right, we'll see if we can fix it. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know why that is. All right, so let's see. Maybe I can help this.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Perhaps I'm trying to work out the audio for YouTube. We will figure that out in just 1 second. But let's talk a bit about the idea that Trump made a deal this week. First of all, there were two elements where everybody kept making these sort of assertions, these normalizing assertions about Trump. And the main one that really stuck in my craw was this idea that Trump made a deal with Democrats this week, right? That was the big thing that, and the right is flipping out about this, that the idea that he made a deal with and can we be abundantly clear? He did not make a deal. A deal. Anybody who's played cards, anybody who has actually been involved in a negotiation of any sort, knows that a deal requires both of us talking about what we want and eventually us coming to a conclusion. And when I'm the one considered to have made the deal, I came out slightly better. I mean, that's the generalized understanding of what it means to make a deal in any kind of business setting or anything. Is because if you took the other person's deal, you didn't make the deal, is the idea, right? And you're not really doing a deal if you just signed a mortgage without even reading it, right? That you didn't make a deal with the bank for a house. If you bought a car for sticker price, you didn't make a deal. You didn't get a deal. Even if they put deal on the banner outside, we give the best deals. If you walked up, looked at the sticker on the window, bought the car, you didn't make a deal. Understand? Like, you cannot, under any circumstance, be considered to have made a deal. And so the idea and the premise, the flawed nonsense that is coming out of the kind of the press around this week, and I can't tell if they really believe this or if they're just doing this to dig into the Republicans and bug them. But the idea that these folks say that Donald Trump made a deal with Democrats is absurd. He didn't make a deal. He took what the Democrats had brought to the meeting in totality. Every element of the deal that was agreed to in the meeting came from Democrats. The Republicans that were there in the meeting were gobsmacked. They were freaking out because he, on a certain level, wasn't even talking to them. He was rude and dismissive when they would put stuff forward. He was punishing them for lack of loyalty by throwing a bone to the Democrats almost entirely. He was not making a deal with Democrats. He was punishing Republicans by giving Democrats everything they thought they could ask for in that meeting. Because had they known he was going to be this gullible and jump right at whatever they had thrown, then they would have asked for more. This week, there comes this picture of Chuck Schumer talking to Donald Trump through the window at the White House. And by God, the man looks like he's ordering Trump around. And a Republican is standing right over his corner, like, skinhead Republican number 65, is standing over Schumer and Trump's shoulder, almost trying to break up the love fest to some degree. Like, it's like watching your friend get hypnotized at a party, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? Why are you waving that watch in front of his face? And in looking at how, Donald Trump came out of the meeting, it was as if they had literally hypnotized him. He literally came out, and we made such a deal. It was such a great deal. If people don't want to make a deal on my side, I'll make a deal, because we got to make a deal. People, we got to get stuff done, which sounds exactly like the languaging the Democrats have put across. The man is referring to Schumer and Pelosi as Chuck and Nancy. And I'm sure Rocky Mountain Mike in our chat room, who's always great with the song parody, if he isn't working on Little Ditty by Chuck and Nancy, is got to be coming down the pike. I trust that that's on the way. But the point is, he didn't make a deal. Okay? There was no deal made. This man sat in a meeting with Democrats and Republicans. He was mad at the Republicans, and he decided to take it out on them by siding with Schumer and Pelosi and the Democrats because of how they suggested the win would come, why it would benefit him, and how cruel it looks and how ugly it looks and how unpopular he would be if he went with what the Republicans were ultimately suggesting. Which, by the way, is true. You understand? Like, what the Republicans were suggesting is politically untenable. It is unpopular even with Republicans. It is the Freedom Caucus, pushing this idea that they have a better idea of what America is about, and Constitution and public polling be damned. This is what needs to be done to satisfy an ever shrinking, and bifurcated fringe of the Republican Party. And the Republicans who live in fear of the response from these people are ultimately directing this conversation. They are the ones bringing to the president, this is what you need. You need to fund this wall because that's what your constituents are angry about. And because it is the effective version of burning a cross on the lawns of Mexicans. That's what the wall represents to them. The wall is not a barrier to protect anybody, that it represents to this group of Republicans, it is their version of a burning cross aimed at immigrants. And the idea that the president, quote unquote, made a deal on DACA, when you look at the flip-flopping that went on during the idea that he rolls out this thing, Jeff Sessions sets up this artificial deadline with these governors about when DACA's going to be, a lawsuit's going to be filed, and again, I don't know why if I have to say this again, but the government gets sued all the time by states' attorneys general, sometimes individually and sometimes in groups. It happened umpteen times about the Affordable Care Act. The government does not always have to respond to them, and they certainly do not have to acquiesce to the demands of the lawsuit itself. That's an absurdity. So the idea that you're boxed in a deal by an optional lawsuit that you can simply defend and tell them to go away is, again, not deal-making. It is not what this president branded himself as able to do. It's an absurdity. So the idea that he was threatened with this lawsuit that was never ultimately filed because he said he was repealing, he rescinded DACA rather than confront this effectively racist lawsuit from 12 attorneys general, that in some way is indicative, again, of him being a deal maker. Right. And so he doesn't have to do this, but he jumps straight to it. Right. He leaps to this deal, this quote unquote deal, and says, okay, we're going to rescind DACA. These guys are going to sue me, so I'll just do it. It's his way of settling out of court, paying an emotional fine by, the blowback from doing this will be the effective version of paying out $25 million for the Trump University thing to make the case go away, right? And then what happens? The blowback happens, and he goes, well, they've got 6 months to do it, and we're not going to act on it. And Nancy told me I should send out a tweet that tells you guys, we're not going to deport any dreamers for 6 months, and Congress has time to fix this. They should fix this. This is theirs. They should fix this. And if they don't fix it, I'll revisit it. Well, then what did your rescinding of it mean in the first place? Why couldn't you have just simply made the deal and acted as a bully pulpit and said, I'm the president and I'm directing the Congress, because Republicans are in control of this, to deal with the DACA issue and do make a specific bill, do immigration reform. I'm directing them to do this. And if they don't, I'm going to rescind DACA and force their hand. You could have done that, but he didn't, because he doesn't understand what he's doing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more about the failed, comically bad deal-making of this president and the Breitbart response, which is glorious. This is Steve Bannon being Trump's wingman, clipping his wings. Oh, it's glorious. We'll be back. That's right. Sorry. So, chat room. We had a troll in the thing. Do we get this the weird blue person, or did they retract themselves? I can't do Chuck and Nancy because I'm too busy working on I Need a Lover that won't charge me rubles. I understand. That's absolutely right, Cheryl P., by the way. That those 800,000 voters they know will lean Democratic, even though the premise is that Republicans could actually woo Hispanic voters as they are in large part Catholic and grow up fairly conservative. There's also in the new immigration Hispanic community a sort of a virulent anti-gay bias. that comes from the religious nature of, on at least statistically, and a statistically wide enough group that Republicans could pick off some of those voters, right? But in many ways, I guess they're more racist than they are practical in that regard, right? Hi, Natalie. Thank you. Ozzy, aka Bruce. Oh, Ozzy. Yeah, Natalie adopted one of the rescue kittens that Summer's been taking care of, and yeah. Oh, we're gonna talk about the hat burning. That's we'll lead into that. Yeah. Nice swooping photo from Marshall House. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going on the tour of Marshall tomorrow. And then I went and saw the behind the scenes of Space Camp and all that kind of stuff, and took some pictures. But I'll post them after the fact, just because it's just easier. There's so many kids at that place that if they're on social media and they know when I'm there, it's tough. It's like it's hard to move around. So like I literally had to they had a tour guide for me, and he was so kind of boisterous, which was lovely, that it caught a lot of attention. Yeah. Oh, Tom, that's not Chud and Barry. That's Chud and Selena. Oh, thank you, Carter. Wow. Thanks for the fixing of the sound, or for me to fix the sound. But there you go. Thank you so much, Carter. And yeah, and so the picture I put up of the cat of Chud licking was him licking Selena, aka Maddie. I think that might be her new name. Why were you crowding that statue space? I just felt, pushy in that moment. I'm sorry. 10 seconds. Okay, awesome. How do you think rolling out single payer will help or hurt Dems? Ultimately, we'll talk about that in hour 2.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Gotta love Robert Tepper songs from the Rocky IV soundtrack. It makes you want to just jump down and do 100 sit-ups hanging from, like hanging upside down from the second level of a barn. Anyways, so in the great deal making that people are making a lot of hay of in this kind of, again, the Act 7 of the Trump normalization presidency, the Breitbart folks aren't having it. And this 60 Minutes interview that comes out with Bannon saying, I got Trump's back. I'm going to be his wingman outside the White House. I'm going to be out here with a bowl of gin and Twitter, and I'm just going to take care of my dude in the White House. I got his back. I'm going to cover for him. Whatever he needs, we're there for him. And then he, quote-unquote, makes this deal, and Trump fans start burning their MAGA hats, which was hilarious. I mean, I don't know that there was any greater act of snowflakery than burning your hat in protest. Like, by the way, that has any meaning whatsoever. Because Trump sold those hats for a profit. Your Chinese hat that costs $1 to make, that you bought for $20 or in some cases $40, that you're setting fire to. Trump, on the one hand, knows he just made a profit on something that when you come around because you're a sucker and buy another one because he finally does something that's significantly racist for you again, you'll buy another hat for $40. And then he'll do something stupid and you'll burn that one too. This is straight up 80s. Yeah, go ahead and burn my record, break my record because you say it's satanic. You still had to buy it in the first place. You can't steal records and break them. You had to buy them. So this idea that this impotent protest of people burning their MAGA hats on their mom's glass picnic table on the porch has any impact on this president whatsoever should be a great political lesson, I think, for most of these guys. But where the acting out did come was the hilarious protestations from Ann Coulter, tweeting things like, "Who doesn't want Trump impeached now?" Because she was, if anything, the singular representative of the anti-Hispanic white movement. That to a certain degree, she has kind of made her peace with the fact that she's just going to have to deal when it comes to having black people in the Republican Party on a certain, a harumph, But Mexicans, I'm not having it. And I know I lost ground on black people and Jews, and Asians are here to stay, grumble. But we must have this wall to keep them Hispanics out. And, the Mexicans are coming over. There's one reason Ann Coulter loved Donald Trump is because he purported to be as anti-Mexican as she is. And by the way, I use Hispanic for how I would discuss people of Latino heritage or Hispanic heritage, and there may be some difference in that. But let's be abundantly clear that when the Ann Coulters of the world talk about Latino people or Hispanic people, what they want to say Mexicans. They don't care about Spanish people, or even they're not even considering Guatemalans or Venezuelans or people from Brazil. Everybody's a Mexican who comes here via from going south to north. That's it. If they're Venezuelans who changed planes, walked through, or drove through Mexico to get to the United States, they're Mexicans, according to Ann Coulter. That's abundantly clear in her discourse, right? And she wigged out this week. And she was indicative of an entire wing of Trump's supporters, the MAGA hat-burning snowflakes, who, are so emotionally hurt by the fact that now Hispanic people he's going to give amnesty to DACA people who have lived in this country since they were 6 years old, who were brought over here during a period where they had no rights to or ability to live on their own, were brought over by their parents, have lived here, many of whom thought that they were American citizen. Boy, that was a comeuppance. Some of them who knew they weren't but chose to earn their citizenship by joining the military and fighting for the Constitution of this country. These people have learned more about and been more active as citizens of this country than most of the people who want them thrown out, are more aware of their rights and realities, and ultimately I call them undocumented Americans, because they are not any more Mexican than someone who vacationed there when they were 2. These people are Americans who just don't have paperwork. And you could say that their parents shouldn't have brought them here, and that they're, they have a responsibility to follow the law of their parents, and that's just tough or whatever. But understand that these human beings are Americans. The majority of them, are bilingual, but English is in many ways their primary language because they are so, I guess, normalized to American culture, as it were, because this is their country. And the idea that you would take 800,000 people who have been living here since they were 8, 10, 12 years old, have grown up here, have become, are a part of American society, and lump them in with people who as adults are sneaking across the border currently, which is, by the way, net zero anyways. It is a fallacy, but it points out to your own personal bias in those regards. And these are Americans who just don't have the right paperwork. And they value this country. Some of them have given their lives in battle. Some of them have given their lives helping hurricane victims. And the human cost of packing a person up who it is the equivalent of taking, let's say, every person with a German or Norwegian background in Minnesota and moving them back to Norway or Germany when they don't speak German and they don't have a place to live, and in some cases don't have relatives that live there anymore, that the generations have passed on, the entirety of their living family is here. This illusion that they will somehow go there and then get in line to become and not be in physical danger by this happening is ludicrous. And so this artificial deadline gets set up, by Jeff Sessions, who, again, anybody with the middle name Beauregard, dictating racial policy in the United States at any given point, bit troubling. So, but the idea is that Breitbart's going to have Trump's back. That's from the 60 Minutes interview, and that the president himself acts on this artificial deadline, says, I'm rescinding DACA. Then he gets blowback. I'm not rescinding DACA. Then Nancy Pelosi says, you better send out a tweet that says you're not going to be mean to the DACA recipients. You could give them 6 months so the Congress can work stuff out, so they don't get afraid and people think their lives are in danger. And it's destabilizing entire communities when you do this. Okay, I'll send out I'm not going to do anything. No action for 6 months. And if the Congress doesn't handle it in 6 months, I'll revisit it, which is effectively an impotent argument that undermines what you said before. Okay, so Captain Deal Making, this is his idea of making a deal. Okay, I'll buy that. No, I won't buy it. I didn't mean to buy that. That's it. Okay, so Wingman Breitbart comes out with Amnesty Dawn as soon as this comes out, Amnesty Dawn is the headline. And then the follow-up is extraordinary. The follow-up to Trump's making this deal with Democrats and this fixing of DACA in this circumstance is the linguistic gymnastics that Hannity and Breitbart and all these Trump supporters are going through to make it okay, to make it make sense to them, is unbelievable. And when we come back from the break, I want you to see what I read some Breitbart, so you didn't have to. You're welcome. And also, we're going to talk in the next hour about single payer. I think we got a whole hour to discuss that next hour too, because I think that conversation and the tide towards single payer is a minefield for Democrats, but it's great that it's happening, and there needs to be an exercise in like knuckle down patience as this works its way through, because this could be a great moment for Democrats if we can keep from eating each other during this process. And it will be a process. Not everybody's going to be on board. Not everybody's going to be on board with the same version. We'll talk about that in the next hour. We're going to take a break right now. When I come back, the Breitbart and Hannity stuff I had to go through, so you didn't have to. You're welcome. Yes, throwing myself on the information grenade. I even watched the Ben Shapiro lecture. We'll be back right after this. This morning said he knew Bernie Sanders long ago from Vermont. When Bernie speaks of healthcare, his initials are BS, right? Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about this in the next hour, but John Conyers' single payer bill was put in earlier, has 170 co-sponsors, takes 2 years less time to implement. Sanders' program takes 4 years, according to the bill he's presenting. Conyers wants it to happen faster, in 2 years. the argument becomes which is better. And that's a good policy discussion to have. We'll talk about that in the next hour, though.
We have 3 callers already.
Okay, cool.
Still coming in.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I already told Brad from the chat room, maybe you may take them after this or after 12 o'clock.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll grab a couple in this next one. I'm just going to read a couple of these Breitbart headline kind of pieces, and then I'll go into calls. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Charles, welcome. Good to see you. Ben Shapiro lecture would go well with a session on the Skylab toilet, right? It is abundantly clear and I've watched probably 6 of Ben Shapiro's lectures now, his talks, that he's basically the beige Larry Elder. The reason why he's liked by the right is that he says all the stuff that Larry Elder says about the black family and black people's, behavior and education and violence and blah, 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 all the stuff that Larry Elder says. It was kind of, he's like the hardline version of what Bill Cosby was saying. But those people don't listen to him because Larry Elder is black. They would rather a white guy say it, and that white guy is Ben Shapiro. So, and because he's Jewish, they think that gives him cover for the anything he says about black people that could be construed as racist. There you go. Because there's definitely an underlying... Well, we'll talk about that later. Hi, Nancy.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Now, I told you before the break that I read some Breitbart for you. Now, and I will say that, I'm joking about it being painful, but it's more funny than painful because, quite frankly, a lot of this stuff reads more like an Onion article than serious journalism. And a lot of times, it's kind of like the Daily Caller. Both of the Breitbart and the Daily Caller are a lot of foot-stomping, pseudo-conservative bigots who are really upset about gay people and really upset about Mexicans and almost have to dovetail anything that they say into that, right? That's the important thing. It's like whatever they start talking about, it's eventually going to lead inexorably towards black people are inherently violent, Mexicans are coming over the border, and the Muslims want Sharia law. Like it's basically, these are the 3 hits. It's like a singer who only sings in one key. And you can start out, you think the song is different, but it is not. So the way Trump is being handled, his deal making supposedly, by both Fox News, specifically Hannity, and Breitbart, is incredibly telling and amazingly hypocritical. The incredible part of them flagellating, and maybe this is their idea of having his back in the first place, but it seems like a double-edged knife that they are just twisting in his gut in some ways, is that they are blaming either Kelly or Republican leaders for forcing Trump into making a deal with Democrats. That this is ultimately the story that they are telling. Okay, after the Amnesty Don concept gets splattered all over their headline, and they're worried that it will upset him or that the Trump followers started filling their comment section. By the way, when I say Trump followers in those situations, I mean Russian bots, because that's a whole nother conversation. But so only about 20% of the people who are actually on these websites, right, are actual human beings. And they're racists and they're nutcases and they believe in Trump and they love him and they have all these horrifying thoughts. But the other 80% who are parroting them or dropping links in and stuff, they're all Macedonian, bots linked to Russia. Just understand that. We're going to discover that the incredibly inflated social media numbers of everyone and everything are largely bot oriented, and that social media itself is almost a farce after a while. But okay, so Chief of Staff Kelly set up President Trump for amnesty fiasco. Following the Amnesty Dawn headline, Breitbart's follow-up headline is Chief of Staff Kelly set up President Trump for amnesty fiasco. Fiasco, that's right. White House Chief of Staff, yes, I don't want to subscribe. No, I don't. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly ensured that President Donald Trump was literally surrounded by amnesty boosters the night he agreed to give away a huge, expensive, and unpopular amnesty in exchange for an empty bag of border security promises. The September 13th amnesty deal, which is what they are calling it, has proved so half-baked and disastrous that Kelly and other top officials have promised to develop a new immigration reform plan within 10 days, which matches Trump's 2016 campaign proposals. The Kelly setup was exposed by the seating chart, which seated Trump between the two Democratic leaders, Senators Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, according to the Washington Post. Act 1 was the dinner itself, a meal of honey, sesame, crispy beef, sticky rice, and chocolate cream pie for dessert, with Schumer and Pelosi flanking Trump on both sides. So the idea is that it's not that Trump isn't awesome at making deals, and that he's the genius that we've been pushing that he is, and he's got this magical charisma that just chews the room up, and that nobody can, deal with how incredibly powerful and well-spoken he is, and how he can drive a conversation, and it's so important that we know this. It's that the minute he sat down with two Democrats on either side of him, he might as well be a ventriloquist dummy. That's the argument. This is the argument that Breitbart thinks helps Donald Trump. That it's not that it's General Kelly made the mistake of putting two Democrats right next to him, and Trump, with the spongy head that he holds on his neck, absorbed anything that was close. I mean, that's their argument. Another person in the room that was Trump's congressional relations chief, Mark Short, who was a former president of a Koch brothers pro-immigration group, which is a weird fight that they're picking. On September 12th, he suggested the president should trade his campaign promise of a border wall in exchange for tax breaks sought by CEOs. On a Friday MSNBC show, Short admitted that the September 13th seating was deliberate when he answered a question from MSNBC's Hallie Jackson about Pelosi being ignored by other politicians at the meeting, saying, "I was there, Hallie. The conversation was one that was very friendly and very jovial, and I don't recall any conversation about women being left out of the conversation. In fact, we seated Nancy Pelosi right next to the president so her opinions could be heard." Dun, dun, dun! Do these guys really think that Trump's head is so porous that if you sat two Democrats on either side of him, it's like a tractor beam? Thank you, Charles, by the way, for super chatting in the chat room. By the way, we're at houseparks.tv if you want to watch the live stream as I stream from Huntsville, Alabama. So there is no evidence, this is awesome, there is no evidence that Trump or his aides recognized the huge-scale unpopularity and massive costs of the Democrats' demands, which would likely exceed $100 billion over the next 10 years. So their argument is, and this is the primary article, by the way, their argument is that Trump has a sponge for a head, is so easily led and gullible, and so unaware of the facts that if you put two Democrats next to him, unchecked, he will just do whatever they say. And yet, he is allegedly the savior of the Republican Party and the grand leader and perhaps anointed by Christ. Honestly, you're kidding, right? This is your best argument for the man. Is that he's a great leader. He's so, you can't even realize what a grasp of the issue, so detail-oriented. He knows everything about peeps, and he plays the media like a violin. But if you sit him between two Democrats, he'll basically cave and buy in on everything with sight unseen without ever looking at the material aspects of the deal. That's their best argument following the Amnesty Dawn thing. And then you got Sean Hannity saying, GOP leader failures push Trump's, and this is a quote, into the arms of Schumer and Pelosi. Like he's a hurricane puppy. In the arms of an angel. Radio and television host Sean Hannity joined Sirius XM host Raheem Kassem on Friday's Breitbart News Daily to talk about his upcoming induction into the National Radio Hall of Fame, because they now have a hilarity wing, an irony wing. The controversy about the controversial president's dealings with the Democratic leaders concerning DACA. This is now my 30th year on radio. I started college radio in Santa Barbara. I was absolutely atrocious at it. He admitted with a laugh. Oh, that self-deprecating Sean Hannity. Just adorable. And the backstory is, I've been blessed, blah, blah. He's telling all this story. Hannity and Richard Jewell Institute taught him a valuable lesson, talking about his time. Where is it? Hannity asked to take on the immigration reform possibility that President Trump would make a deal with Democratic leaders in Congress to provide amnesty for the illegal aliens formerly covered by President Obama's DACA order. The president promised a wall, that great, beautiful wall, Hannity pointed out, and he did say that there would be doors in it. Here's my fear for the president as of this day. Now he did a lot of clarification on Air Force One as he's making his way to Florida. He's pretty much suggesting there was no deal made. The news was that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer said a deal was made. He said that's not the case. We got to see eventually what this evolves into. There was absolutely, they agreed on it. It's already working its way through the Congress. It's in that's how the budget. Hannity identified, check this out, 5 forces working against the president. And I'm sorry, to our callers, I'll get to you on the other side of the break because I've only got a couple minutes left and I want to get this in, so hang out. One is the deep state. He began. He basically had to deal with a leak a day, including leaks of conversations with the Prime Minister of Australia, over the President of Mexico. No other president dealt with these types of leaks. The unmasking, the surveillance, the leaking. We still have not gotten to the bottom of that story, largely because all the people who were leaking that he's talking about were Trump's own staff that he fired or had someone else fire on his behalf. He also has to deal with the Democratic Party. None of them have ever liked him. They haven't lifted a finger to support him. We're now in the ninth month of his presidency, and they're not lifting a finger to help him. Why would they help him? Yeah. I'm sure he had the same complaint about the Republicans towards Obama at every turn. The meeting that McConnell had on the night Obama was inaugurated. We got to take a break. We got 3 more groups that Hannity thinks form the Pentavlet, including Colonel Sanders. And right after this, we'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, and WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, live from Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you, Tom. These people are hilarious. Yes, and thank you, Tom, so much. Do you like death metal, Amos? Tori Amos has it reminded me, Amos, your last name. Tori Amos has a new record out. Very excited. I'm downloading it today. I saw it late last night, and I was like I'm not adding anything to my hard drives so I have to worry about, the phone and everything working today for doing the show. So, fingers crossed. If hopefully I don't get bumped off the internet at noon, which sometimes happens in hotels. Fingers crossed, because where I am, it's just turning noon. How about they think they're smarter than the rest of us? I know, that's the amazing part. I would love to hear this audio from Hannity. I don't know if it's, yeah. We'll see if I can get it up. I just think it's so long, and the dude loves the sound of his own voice. Yeah, my worry is if I play the audio, it will eat up too much bandwidth and it'll slow down both the video and my audio to Chicago. So it's like it's like I'm on the Enterprise. Excuse me. And I have to divert power from life support to keep the Enterprise flowing. Yeah, Charles, I have a real problem listening to and watching this. Damn you, Ramadan, right? I'd tell you what hotel it is, but I don't need the undue attention of where I'm staying at any given time. Okay, Nicola. Nice. Yeah, he made Theresa May seem stable this week. That's no easy task. And by the way, Charles and Julie, thank you guys both so much for being our moderators every week and being on Troll Watch. When it happens, I appreciate it. Thank you. Sometimes I can jump in there and do it, but a lot of times when I'm juggling, when we have more, news pieces and stuff I need to read, I might miss them. So you guys have complete autonomy. I've given our military the ability to do whatever it takes to defeat our enemies in every capacity. I do watch Rachel Maddow sometimes for fun, but I don't trust her either. Why? Can I say something unequivocally, folks? Just because somebody doesn't share 100% of your ideas does not mean they are not trustworthy. I know Rachel Maddow. I have hung out with Rachel Maddow. I have spoken at length off camera with Rachel Maddow as a human being. She's a good person. She's a decent human being who really, really gives a damn. And this idea that she's that anybody, even Chris Matthews to some degree, and he goes probably more to the edge of being understanding or accepting of right-wing stuff, when he's trying to have his show on because he's playing quote-unquote hardball and he's trying to incorporate, arguments in and drive the argument in one direction. The acceptance or the allowance of someone to make their argument or your defense of their ability to make it ever is not she's not overly sensational. She's not. She's telling a story. She's trying to get you to understand context. But if it's not worth talking about, if the issue isn't important on a news level and on a national security level, on the importance of it for the social fabric of the country, she doesn't do it. She's a good human being. Full stop. And, I have my problems with some people. I have my problems with Tom Hartman being on RT, for a time. And how they were using his messaging. I don't blame him for it. I think he's a good human being. Sometimes Rachel is too deep for some people. Yeah, well, that's her methodology, and that's fine. But that does not mean she is untrustworthy. And honestly, as this conversation goes forward, and we start talking about single payer and whether it'll work and how long it will take to work and how we transition from the insurance system that we have now to offering it as a possibility and the multiple versions that'll be coming out and how people do it, this idea that you have enemies over this issue is just flat out false. Thank you. Thanks, Lady B. Also a good person. Lady B. Also just patently awesome. Just so you know.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So we almost got through. Fans of the movie So I Married an Axe Murderer may be aware of the Pentavlet, which Mike Myers' Scottish dad in the movie believes runs the world. The Medicis, the Borgias, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up. The idea that there are 5 families that rule the world and there's really nothing you can do about it. And they just control everything because he reads the Weekly World News, and this is where he gets his news from. And there's a thin line between the crazy comedic character that Mike Myers makes his dad out to be in that movie and Sean Hannity as an actual human being. So before the break, we got to, of course, the 2 groups that Hannity identifies as being against the president. The first one being the deep state. These are people who work in government, who have the audacity to have taken an oath to protect the Constitution and won't let Trump just do his thing, and therefore can't be trusted. And the people, and somehow the deep state, quote unquote, are the people leaking, when we find out that actually the leaks stopped the minute the people that Trump brought into the White House himself are broomed, either by Scaramucci or by General Kelly. Suddenly a lot of these, the leaks themselves start vanishing. Now, I don't doubt that there were certain members like holdovers and people like that who were just horrified at what they were saying and were acting as whistleblowers about all this stuff. If the public doesn't know this guy is dismantling all the workings of the State Department and our defense structures because he's goofy and doesn't understand and hasn't even presented 80% of the people that are needed to fill the jobs in the government for his administration and is blaming it on the Democrats because his appointments aren't going through fast enough when he hasn't even nominated the people, that's of concern. When people who've hired him, because understand this, Trump does not have any friends. 0. He has people who manage him so they can get something out of him. It has been his entire life experience. He used to have friends, and then he slept with their wives. And back in 1987, and they stopped being his friend. And so now he is surrounded by sycophants and fools. He hires people and pays them to like him, or his family follows him around because they're either afraid they'll be kicked out of the will, or they're genuinely just trying to be good children to a doddering father who's used to be kind of cool and is now kind of slipping, or they believe in some way that he's going to ruin the brand if they don't help manage him. Or in some cases, maybe with Don Jr., they actually do support him because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and the amount of abuse that Don Jr. went through actually led him to believe that that's how you behave in the world, and he's passing it on to the rest of us. So 3 groups: the deep state, the Democratic Party, which, again, the idea that Sean Hannity, the hypocrisy of his whining about this. Then you've got the Democratic Party, none of whom have ever liked him. This is a quote. None of them have ever liked him. They haven't even lifted a finger to support him in what? We're in the 9th month of his presidency? Hannity observed. And then we got the media, of which, by the way, Sean Hannity is on one of the top 3 networks. I mean, it's falling now. The failing Fox News, as Trump would call it if he was honest. And he's been, hemorrhaging advertisers because of his bigotry, not because of his love for Trump, but literally is pushing both the Seth Rich story and his obvious anti-trans and anti-immigrant sentiment that he pushes. But when you got the media, he just calls it the media. When you're on, Sean Hannity is decrying the media when he is on one form of media for a living and being interviewed by another form of media, and part of the interview is about him getting an award for being in the media for 30 years. Are you out of your mind? What are you talking about? Stop talking about mainstream media when you're on one of the top 3 cable networks for news. It's a joke. Breitbart is funded by billionaires. They're not a scrappy YouTube channel. Idiots. Anyways, okay, so then you've got the weak Republicans and the never-Trumpers. Boo, friggity who. This is Hannity. Then you got the weak Republicans and the never Trumpers. Those are people that never wanted him to be president. And now, Breitbart is run by Steve Bannon now, and Steve made a comment on 60 Minutes that I agree with. I could say that the leadership in the House and the Senate have not wanted this president to succeed. There's a great antipathy towards him, and we are a party right now that doesn't even have an identity. So the weak Republicans and the never Trumpers. By the way, the never Trumpers, he might have a case that they never wanted this guy. And the never Trumpers don't trust him. But if Trump took the standard fare Republican stuff that was tried to be pushed for the last 10 years and put it up for a vote and as an actual plan, especially on tax reform, the never Trumpers would vote for it. But they just wouldn't give him credit for it. They wouldn't say, Trump, thank God we have somebody in the White House who will sign this, because they look at him as an idiotic rubber stamp. The never Trumpers don't care that Trump shepherds through Trump stuff. They hate him when he nearly pushes us to the brink of nuclear war every other day, when he doesn't even constructively know how to run the government, and he undermines their messaging and his messaging by tweeting on the toilet at 6 o'clock in the morning based on zero facts and evidence, and then goes on television and say, I like to wait before I have the evidence before I say that. Right? They hate him. But if the Republicans put forward their regular claptrap bills that they try to shovel through, he'd sign them. So the never Trumpers aren't running interference on Trump. And the border, state ones don't want the border wall in a lot of their districts because it will negatively affect business. But shoveling those guys in, by the way, with the quote-unquote weak Republicans who would also push through whatever he wants. And the only problem the weak Republicans have is that it's not that they're weak on Trump or weak on their own bills. It's weak on facing the Freedom Caucasians, this weird little group of Republicans who seems to intimidate these guys nonstop. Okay, so that's the other ones. The group number 4 is the weak Republicans and never Trumpers, which, by the way, should be 4 and 5. I mean, it's two different kinds of groups, but whatever. No one ever expected Sean Hannity had the ability to count. I would argue by them failing to keep 7.5-year promise of repealing and replacing Obamacare and failing to be prepared to deal with the debt ceiling, they're literally pushing the president, who I believe in my heart wants to keep all of his promises. Isn't that lovely? I believe in my heart. I believe that the president in his heart, and I believe in my heart, wants to keep every promise he ever made. Even the ones about repealing and replacing, and the ones where we would have cheaper, better health care for everyone and universal coverage. All of the promises, even the ones that directly contradict each other and would, if they were both implemented at the same time, would create a political black hole that would swallow all light in the known universe. I believe he wants to keep all of his promises. I think he wants to keep all of his promises that trans people should be treated differently, but also that he'll be the greatest LGBTQ president. He wants to keep all of his promises, no matter who he made them to, in whatever room. And to some degree, maybe Sean Hannity is right. Maybe the president does want to keep all of his promises. But that, because this president will promise anyone anything if it makes them like him temporarily. There's no point where, yes, he wants to keep his promises. He just can't keep track of his promises. All right. Hannity judged that the President Trump does not keep his promise to secure the border. It would be the biggest political mistake he could make. Now, he did say no deal will be done unless the wall was built, and then he said no amnesty will be given, and then he further went down and said no citizenship will be given, no benefits will be given. I think what he's suggesting is that there is a possible deal for people who have been here for 8 or 10 years, that those who grew up, quote, under DACA, that it might be part of the deal. So Hannity thinks that what's going to happen is that the only people who qualify for DACA are the people who entered before, like slightly before or during the Obama administration, are covered by the Obama DACA deal. That's what he thinks. That's not what Trump said. And that's not what's going to happen. And the wall funding is not going to be in that bill. And the debt ceiling is only going to be raised for 3 months because the Democrats want the Republicans to have to argue why not. Because the Freedom Caucus will hold their quote-unquote feet to the fire nonstop. Your calls after this, 773-763-9278. So the by the way, in the rest of this Breitbart article, Trump cultist Sean Hannity says, knowing him as well as I do, it's probably a negotiating tactic. He said of President Trump, he might be giving more than a lot of conservatives want, but I want to see the final details. But I do think there's a risk here for the president because Schumer and Pelosi do not like him. They do not want him to succeed. They've lied about him repeatedly. They will not be with him or for him for a good 95% of his agenda. So I think there are dangerous waters ahead for the president. The ideal situation would be Republicans get their act together and keep their promises that they made to the American people. But I'm not holding my breath on that, he said sarcastically. Okay, dear Breitbart dummy. But saying you're not holding your breath on that is not a sarcastic statement. A sarcastic statement would be going, the ideal situation would be Republicans get their act together and keep their promises that they made to the American people, and I'm going to start holding my breath on that. That's sarcasm. It's the inversion of the language. It's verbal irony. That's what sarcasm is. The fact that they follow up with he said sarcastically about a non-sarcastic statement means that the person who wrote this article has probably an 11-year-old's understanding of English. And I mean that legitimately. I'm not saying that as a slam. I'm saying because they do. That's not a sarcastic statement. It's not verbally ironic at all. You're an idiot. Anyways, so that one, I know that that's nitpicking, but it's indicative of who these idiots are. Thank you.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. Let's take some calls. Who do we have first? I think we have Brad. He's been holding on for a bit, so I appreciate that. Should we go to him first?
Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, Brad.
Oh, sorry. This is Brad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I was calling because I infuriated by these people talking this week, Sarandon, Jimmy Dore,
right,
going on about DACA and complaining about the things, and they're the ones that said, "Oh, we'd be better off with Trump."
That's right.
4 years, then we'll just run the board.
That's right.
But we're going to sacrifice everyone, and that everyone is me, because I have type 1 diabetes and I have Medicaid expansion under ACA. But I'm expendable to them.
Yeah, you're the omelet. You're the broken egg in their omelet. Right. And again, this is why. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
And they were promoting Jill Stein, agent of Putin, the whole time. You can't complain now.
Right.
You can't complain that he's thrown DACA and ACA and LGBT under the bus because this was your plan all along.
That's right. You literally have a responsibility to either go up to that person and apologize and say you were wrong, find the nearest immigrant or family of an immigrant, or anybody who's covered by DACA, or any trans person you meet, or anybody with insurance that's doesn't know if they're going to have insurance day to day because of this man. You have a responsibility to go up to them, admit you were wrong, and apologize, or change your methodology permanently. I find it despicable that, and again, this is why the whole this bifurcation of the message that where you create enemies within your own party. One of the reasons, the Republicans do it for largely for show. They'll do this thing where they go, you never speak ill of another Republican in public, right? It's the Reagan rule was was one of the big ones, and I'm not necessarily in agreement that you can't do that. But what I am saying is that you don't vilify. You can call somebody an idiot even, but saying that they mean ill, that they're evil, and this idea that Hillary Clinton was evil. Basically, the Jimmy Dores and the Susan Sarandons of the world were saying, whatever Trump does is better than whatever Hillary Clinton would do, is patently false. I'll give you the best example I can come up with. The most acute example. Okay, all during the Obama administration, Jimmy Dore and that ilk were attacking, and Lee Camp does this as well, attacking the drone strikes that were okayed under the Obama administration. The Obama administration modified the rules of engagement for military drone usage and for soldiers to minimize civilian casualties while engaged in a theater of war. Now, can you protect in that circumstance that no one will ever be harmed in that? No, you cannot. It's impossible. And at some point, if Bernie Sanders had been elected president, he would have, understand this, had to order a drone strike at some point that would have had either the possibility or the actuality of civilian casualties. That's real. But he would have handled it very differently than Donald Trump would have, as did Obama, as would have Hillary. And Democrats do make a difference in this situation. And since Donald Trump has been president, there have been more civilian casualties from American military exercises than there were in the entirety of the 8 years of the Obama administration. And so this hyperbole about the Obama administration is a war machine that can't wait to kill people, and that Hillary Clinton would just further the abject slaughter, the rounding up and murder of innocent civilians. The idea that she wouldn't have improved our refugee program, even more so over the Obama administration's ability to do so, that she wouldn't have kept the rules of engagement that the Obama administration had put in order, is a falsehood. It is a lie. It is wrong. And people are dead because of that argument. People are dead because 70,000 voters made the difference in the Electoral College in certain theaters around this country of voterhood, and the Jimmy Dores and the Susan Sarandons of the world talked them out of that vote. And their argument that they don't have a reach or that it didn't absolutely make a difference is a lie. I have no patience for that. I went to a taping of Jimmy's thing at they were doing their podcast at the at Flappers in LA. So I went and sat and watched in the back, and there was not a single argument about Donald Trump's engagement with Russia, Donald Trump's ratcheting up of war with North Korea, all the stuff he was doing that didn't immediately arc to Hillary Clinton would have killed more people and probably Pizzagate. Like, the idea was, it was so and maybe it was from guilt or idiocy, or a combination of the two, but they seem to have to talk themselves into, even though we talk people into not voting for Hillary, voting for Jill Stein, or actually voting for Trump, it's not our fault, because if she was in, more people would be killed for reasons that I can't actually justify. And it's wrong. Thank you for bringing it up, and I know I got on a bit of a rant about it, but it matters. And this is why, and to kind of point to what you're talking about, this is why it will matter when we start talking about single payer. So Bernie Sanders is going to bring out, he's unveiling, I think, Wednesday, his single payer bill that's got a bunch of co-sponsors. Awesome. Good for him. John Conyers, a a black Democrat has already presented a single-payer bill, which much like the same mechanics as Bernie Sanders, almost identical, but before Bernie Sanders' plan has come out, that implements 2 years faster than Bernie Sanders' plan would. Bernie Sanders' single-payer plan will take a 4-year transition, which is if Republicans were doing a repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act, and they said it was taking a 4-year arc, we would all say, well, yeah, because they want to skip 2 election cycles so they don't catch hell if it goes south. But since it's single payer, we're all looking at it from, kind of with rosy glasses. And again, I'm for universal health care. I'm for single payer. My personal belief is that state single-payer systems should be available on a cross-state exchange, and everyone should be able to be covered on Medicare for all if they want to buy in on the federal system, but they could also buy into Washington State's or Vermont system if it's run better and more effective for their particular illness or circumstance. So it gives variety in that situation. Basically, an intergovernmental competition structure, right, would be great. That's my plan for it. Doesn't mean I'm against Bernie Sanders getting his plan through. If that's what happens, awesome. But this idea that he's the inventor of it or something will be used to drive a wedge between Republicans like Nancy Pelosi and a couple of others who aren't 100%. That's right. It was Hillary Care. It was literally. And by the way, if she hadn't pushed for that and failed, by the way, we wouldn't have S-chip. We wouldn't have children covered. That's right. That's right. And so she may not have won initially on quote unquote Hillary Care when she tried to push it through back in the day, and the Jimmy Dores and the Susan Sarandons of the world vilify her as an awful human being. But we have S-chip largely because of Hillary Clinton's actions as an individual. By the way, as a first lady, not even as a senator or as a secretary of state, she was doing this while her husband was being dragged through the mud and Republicans were, trying to box him in on all the other kinds of things. What they ultimately got through, even though Hillary Care, quote unquote, failed, what we did get was S-chip, more children covered by insurance. And the Republicans, every time it comes up, try to figure out a way to get rid of S-chip. And so this idea that there's no difference between the parties is a filthy argument, and this idea that somehow there would be fewer dead civilians, more people with insurance, and immigrants would be safer under Trump was literally pushed by these people. It is not an argument that decent people make. Argue on the merits. Argue that, John Conyers' bill might implement too fast and be a shock to the system, or Bernie Sanders' plan might take too long and a lot of people might be left out in the cold. We got to work on the actual mechanics. Argue that. Do it all you want. And I love that idea. That's what democracy is about. What is the best plan? But this idea, I'm not going to be pulled into saying that Bernie Sanders is evil because he decides to add 2 years to his implementation, and people could get sick and die during that 2-year window. But I don't blame him because he's trying to come up with the best plan he can think of for doing it that would actually carry it out and good for him. So is John Conyers, goddammit. That's right. That's right. Both of them will get right. And so this idea of vote, and let's be completely honest that most of Jimmy Dore's YouTube clicks and the money that he makes on the internet come from Russian bots, and so they chase whatever dollar they'll get because they'll get those clicks. And until YouTube fixes its clicks to be more meaningful, and they've moved in many more, they've moved towards people who watch, watching longer and watching the entirety of the show, or watching more minutes of your show rather than just clicking on it over and over. And that did helpfully, But thanks for bringing it up. And I know this is a bone that I have to pick. And I don't have a problem saying this to anybody. I'll sit across from Jimmy and Susan Sarandon and say this to their face. And I'm comfortable doing this because it's too meaningful. And I don't hate them as human beings. They make me very angry, and I'm disgusted by their argument. But again, I can even believe that they are, to borrow a Russian phrase, useful idiots. That they believe their self-righteous message is so important and so good that they don't care who dies in the process because they think there's a bigger win. But the problem is that does not make them any different than Republicans who think that shooting an abortion doctor will save lives. It's still the same argument. That's right. And they don't, not in a democracy. Your means must stay within the bounds of the argument of merit for your idea. I don't believe in Antifa violence, but I also don't think that the people who are in Antifa, their anger that leads to that violence is identical to the anger in the Nazis, for example. You know what I mean? The Nazi groups that want to shoot people or run people over with their cars hate people because of their religion, their birthright, their life. The Antifa people, that's right. There's a huge difference. Absolutely. I appreciate the call. We went way over the break because we both get ranted about it, but I appreciate it. We'll be back. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brad. Cheers. We'll be back right after this. More of your calls. Yeah, in the last 9 months, there have been more dead civilians because of military actions than there were in 8 years of Obama. And Obama worked tirelessly again and again to change the rules of engagement so that I'm using a webcam just because it seems to be the one that hitches the least. What was this? This was so. My problem with that argument is that it is identical to, hey, if we got to have a border, some refugees are going to have to die. Sorry, but to protect us from Sharia law, and my fear of Muslims is so strong that we can't let refugees from those countries in here. And if children have to die on a beach, I'm sorry. That's the argument, right, of the right. I fail to see how that is morally different than if we have Trump in office, and he guts the ACA, maybe eventually that'll drive us to getting universal health care. And if some people lose their insurance, while they're sick, while he's in office, can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. How is no one seems to be able to explain to me how that argument is morally different. No. Best Buy's here 3 hours early. Did you get some tech in the mail, Carl? Carl and I are totally cut from the same cloth, nerd tech wise. Oh, that way. I think that's the uploading through the hotel internet. Killing American health patients does not count as fighting terrorism, right? Sarandon actually said, well, he's not going to just deport all the Muslims. Deportation of Muslims was actually never even the biggest concern. It was literally refugees dying on beaches. Children dying on beaches because they have nowhere to go. And we could take some of them in. And it was a modest number to start with. But even that modest number had to be cut in half, and then cut in half, and then cut in half.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. I want to remind everybody, by the way, to go to drawntodiscover.com if you have a toddler, a little kid who's preschool. They've done all sorts of scientific research to show that like strategic drawing and creative drawing affect how the brain deals with both symbols and language and all these kind of things. And so getting your kids to draw early and often is incredibly helpful. So drawntodiscover.com is the website. If you have a kid, it's a subscription-based program with a lesson plan and courses that you can sit with your kid. Because sometimes you just don't know which way to take them when you're sitting there. Let's just abstractly do this or give them some crayons and let them go, which absolutely is part of it. Sometimes it helps to guide them, and there's a lot of guidance on there to what the best way to do that is. So drawntodiscover.com. Give it a try, give it a shot. Full disclosure of I have a cousin who's involved in that and loves it, and I support it 100%. So there you go. Anyways, okay, so let's take another caller. 773-763-9278. Who do we have, Lady B?
We can go with Steve with the
Yes, we certainly can go to Steve from the Gold Coast. Hi, Steve. Yeah, good to hear from you again.
Thank you. A couple of points. One, I think you're absolutely correct with regards to Donald Trump. I mean, at this point, he's just a man out there looking for validation. So,
right.
Anywhere where he can run and where he can receive the kind of validation, adulation that he needs is going to be representative of the position he's going to take. So, if and he saw a bump in his poll numbers the past couple of weeks because, he decided to be somewhat presidential in the eyes of some people and headed down to oversee relief efforts in the wake of two natural disasters, and then sat down with the Democrats and, and managed to hammer out a compromise. Now, yes, and in his eyes, hey, more Americans love me, so, I must have done something right. Having said that, however, the fact remains that it's just bad politics. I mean, I'm happy as can be with regard to, his having arrived at some kind of a deal with the Democrats. But the reality is, from a political standpoint, it was just terrible. This is something that the Democrats can hang around your throat come December, because that's all you've done is you extended this a few months. You could have rolled it into a discussion about, the tax cut deal that you wanted. So it proves once again, Donald Trump does not understand public policy. He does not understand the legislative process, and he doesn't understand politics. So, at some point, I said this a while ago, at some point, people are going to jump ship. Initially, after, the inauguration, after the election, it's okay, one for all and all for one with the Republican Party. But now people are starting to think about 2018, 2020. And people are going to have to ask themselves, all right, in what camp do I want to be? Because nobody in their right mind thinks Donald Trump is going to get reelected. Some people don't even think he's going to run, whereas others think he's going to get impeached. Nobody thinks he's in their right mind thinks Donald Trump stands a chance of winning reelection in 2020. So now the only
in their right mind being very important part of that, because there's a lot of crazy people who think so, but yeah.
Exactly. The internal fighting, as you pointed out, and Steve Bannon has already turned against this man. I mean, for the people who didn't watch the interview that was highlighted on 60 Minutes, you can watch the long version on that Charlie Rose offered up. He's the one who did the interview. But I mean, you've got internal fighting within internal fighting in this White House and this party. So it's just a question of where are you going to align yourself if you're a Republican going into 2018, 2020, and they're already starting to ask those questions. So.
Right.
I couldn't agree more with you in terms of, those of us on the left or supposed left who, again, the enemy of the good, the enemy of the good is the perfect. So because Hillary Clinton wasn't perfect, so therefore Donald Trump is some sort of a viable alternative. And again, this is an epistemological crisis we're facing in America. We have people who think that, that the alternative to the New York Times, that doesn't get it right all the time, I admit that, is somehow Alex Jones. No, those two are not equal, and they don't stand on an equal footing. The New York Times actually tries to get it right. They look for
and when they get it wrong, they fire people and they issue corrections. And you can say that sometimes their corrections are tepid, but they exist. and they are verifiable. And in a world where you can go and digitally search for something, there's no such thing as hiding it on page 55 anyways. So it's absolutely. Whereas Alex Jones literally has turned into Pravda since this president came in. He's literally simply running interference for the man.
With the exception of having to concede that his followers are idiots, when it comes to his divorce proceedings, or having to sort of backpedal on Pizzagate when he was threatening with actual litigation. So
that's right. When he had to read a message from his lawyer. Right.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Steve. Let's grab another call because I know we have a couple more on, so I don't want to run out of time. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Nick from Sandwich.
From where?
Sandwich.
Hey, Nick. Hey, all right. Hey, Nick from Sandwich. Where no one goes hungry. Yeah. Do they have a Subway in Sandwich? I'm just curious. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
It's hilarious. They actually do. So the Sandwich. Anyway, there's a couple of sandwich shops here. But one point I wanted to make was I wanted to, start out with repeal and replace Republicans and I'll follow it up with some explanation. Look at where, it was brought up, I think you said it earlier that, what was Hannity crying about when he certainly wasn't crying when the Republicans were obstructing, folding their arms for the last 8 years with President Obama.
Right.
They did nothing, and all they did was obstruct. And where would we be 8 years later had they just said, okay, let's do the political process. Let's, find a way to compromise. No, they took their ball and went home. They didn't want to play the game. So,
and by the way, can we say for the record too, real quick, for the record, when Trump's been touting both the job market and the stock market since he came into office. But let's understand that when Obama came into office, the Republicans had just wrecked the entire economy. The stock market was at 6,500 when Obama took office, and it was at 19,000 when he left. I mean, people need to wrap their head around the fact that at the same time we had almost 56 months of uninterrupted job growth because of the Obama administration. Most of the benefits for the first year of one presidency comes from the year before or the negatives. So all the people more people are on food stamps during the Obama administration. That's because they all jumped on food stamps the first 9 months before President Obama had initiated both the stimulus package or any of these other things directly related to what the Republicans had done before. Those were all, and yet Bush, it's not Bush's fault for 9/11 and not paying attention to the President Daily Beat. That was Clinton's fault. But Trump's, the economy boost has nothing to do with Obama. It's just because Trump is awesome. Like, the double standard is insane. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, and so we've got them. We've got the Republicans. I'm going to say because they are cons, and they're doing their thing. So us as normal people, let's just put it. I don't want to use the label of left or whatnot, but the rest of us that are sane and obviously understand how things are going, or at least we have to stop eating each other, with this progressive purity and that garbage, And
I agree.
Because what if we would not have had this progressive purity police holding us back? That this one's not as good as this and that. Well, I'm just gonna vote for this, for Stein or this, or I'm gonna vote for Nader because this guy, what I mean. So we ourselves. Whereas if we would have just put our collective together, rallied behind the way they do, they held their, the uber Christians held their nose and voted for this guy who grabs peas, seriously, we could have at least held, Hillary's feet to the fire and push her to keep going further and further to do things that are good for us versus now, what are you going to do with this character?
You're spending all your time digging out of a hole instead of actually making progress. You spend all your energy now getting out of a hole and patting yourself on the back for marching, by the way, against Trump, when we wouldn't even have had to march to get Hillary Clinton to get to where Trump is now. You understand? Like, all the effort, all the energy, as invigorating and exciting and as happy as we are to pat ourselves on the back, would have been 100% unnecessary if Hillary Clinton was in office. And if we did have that energy and we did care, those marches for single payer or for gay rights or trans rights in states around the country would have been put to better effort to change the state laws in areas and create a groundswell towards federal protection for certain people who are on the fringes of society. That's the better use of democratic energy. We got to take a break. We'll be back. A couple more calls and the happy ending right after this. It's always good to play a song about the end of the world right before. Yeah, we're working hard just to stay even. That's the idiocy of this. And there are people, and understand that the Jimmy Dores of the world make money and make a living off the fact that we're in a pit now. Can you leave this up and so I can rewind? Absolutely, it will be up. So personally, I just think that violent rhetoric. This is where Ted Nugent and I agree now. You can talk crap about somebody. You can call them all kinds of names if that's what is required, but you do not use violent language about them. You do not purport violence from them where there is none. You do not insist upon violent motives on their part if they do not exist. Without evidence, and you certainly do not create a situation where you are making up violent ideology in another human being simply because you disagree with their policies.
1 minute and there's no more callers. The last one dropped off.
Okay, great, awesome. That's cool because I can finish out this. We don't have a ton of time in the last break anyway, so that's good. Either got mad at me or we already said it.
Well, yeah, the last one that dropped off, he was a conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Snowflakes. At some point, I got to start my own line of nutritional supplements, because apparently that's how you build an empire. That was amazing, Lady B. That was like a mashup between, yeah.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
So the overall, this concept, on the one hand, that the president made a deal with Democrats, this illusion that he made a deal. The only people pushing that in many ways are people who are pushing for sort of a normalization of order in the news, and people who buy into sort of just the abject branding that Trump puts forward. This idea that that if you just, that because he made deals and he fired people on The Apprentice, that's what happened here. And it is clearly not. It is abundantly clear that Trump did not make a deal with Democrats. He took their offer. And when he took their offer, he didn't do it because the merits of the deal convinced him necessarily. It seems from all reporting that he largely took it almost primarily to get under the skin of the Republicans who were at the meeting, because he was going to teach them a lesson for not being sufficiently loyal to him. And we of course find out that this week Jeff Sessions was ultimately the person who pushed this idea. Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions. This is from WAPO, Washington Post. Attorney General Jeff Sessions apparently convinced Donald Trump he had no choice but to pull the plug on the deferred action for childhood arrivals using a phony deadline as the pretext. Stephen Bannon and the alt-right may think this was a terrific idea, but the polls say otherwise, as does Trump's newfound interest in finding a fix to his own political malpractice. According to a new Morning Consult political poll, 65% of voters think that passing a bill that grants young people who were brought to the United States illegally when they were children, often with their parents, protection from deportation should be a top or at least important priority. By the way, this is not just people who support it, which is a vast majority as well. It's like over 70%. 77 at last call. 77% of the people believe that DACA recipients should be allowed citizenship. 65% of people think it should be an important priority, a top or at least important priority, a top priority. And so that's an incredible concept. It is like unto the reality of, and when gay marriage was starting to really grow, there was a groundswell about making gay marriage legal. There was a lot of stories about how the American sentiment has changed over the years, and I think to some degree it certainly had, and I think honestly that shows like Will and Grace and my show Queer as Folk have played no small part in what energetic change there was in that belief system. But the reality is I think the majority of people had always been okay with it, at least since the 80s. But it was how the question was asked in the polls that shifted over time, because people couldn't keep asking the incendiary version of the question because it would come to light. People go, they're asking this like, if it means the destruction of straight marriage, would you be okay with gay marriage? And so most people say no, and then they go, most people are against gay marriage. When that's not, it's a false question and a false answer to a false question. So anyways, this idea that they, how they put these questions affects how people answer these questions. And when you talk about DACA recipients, and you get 77% of people saying they're for DACA recipients receiving some sort of citizenship or a pathway to citizenship without having to leave the country, without being deported, and 65% of people saying that it should be a top priority, or at least very important, and a primary priority right now. That there's a quickening and importance about this. It's indicative that the public is actually a lot less racist and a lot less negative than we would seem to be if all you did was look out, use your television set as a window, right? And that's an important message to have. And politicians who want to bring us together, who want us to recognize our humanity and our closeness and all those things, it would be quite easy for them on a very regular basis to come out and go, you know what? If you poll Americans, by a large majority, we are we are pro-choice. Even the ones who are pro-life can also be pro-choice. So there's a volume of pro-choice people. We're pro-LGBT rights. We are largely for equality for pay for women. All these things, when you ask the question in a very plain and normal way without push polling it in a negative sense or attaching an artificial negative to it, the American public time and time again polls, especially socially, in a very progressive way. And the only time they don't is when you tack on these weird additives. Are you for equal pay for women if it means men losing their jobs? If it means you would lose your job? No. People don't like equal pay for women, statistically. So it matters how it's asked. And it matters how the language appears. And you can watch how Donald Trump has to flip back and forth between two different kind of methodologies of speaking about an issue to know that that's how most of the time when confronted with those issues, the backlash, the push in those directions is actually towards a more open society. That the neo-Nazis and the marchers at these stupid rallies are outnumbered 50-1 by people who are against anti-Semitism, racism. And even the quote-unquote Antifa who are there, who are willing to be violent, those folks are outnumbered by 80-1 by peaceful protesters. And that needs to be a constant recognition in the messaging about stuff. And so you will never see, if you've noticed, in any of my YouTube videos, or in any of my stories that I put forward, or any of my retweets, where as harsh and silly and as joking as I can be, that I will never use the phrase "so-and-so absolutely destroys so-and-so's argument," so-and-so smashes so-and-so's argument, blah, 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 about, destroys Fox News in blah, blah, blah. Because every article you've ever seen about someone destroying someone else's argument, all those people are still like, blah, blah, so someone destroys Ann Coulter's argument. Blah, blah, blah. They destroy Ann Coulter and smack down of blah, blah. All this wrestling talk about political discourse is not helpful. Make fun of the people, joke all you want, but when you create violent rhetoric as a way of shoring up your argument, you undermine your argument. Just don't do it. Be creative. Find another way to create that conversation. You can say the same thing without doing that, right? Yeah, that's right. One of the people in our Yamini in our chat room says, Sparks completely destroys Door. Right. So that would be the argument. Like, I stand by the argument that I make or whatever, but I would never call it me destroying Jimmy Dore, destroying Susan Sarandon. I have a very strong argument with these people. I think what they're doing is wrong. I think in some cases it is self-righteous, misguided, and dangerous. And I think in other times it's genuinely mean. And they're aware of the damage that they're doing, but they don't care. But that's not me destroying their argument. That's me arguing with them. We're Americans. This is a democracy. Everybody's valuable and every vote counts. And this is I want to end the show on this as a public service message to all you I live in a blue state anyways voters. Okay. First of all, after the last election, you should be abundantly aware that if you live in the Pennsylvanias and the Michigans of the world and you go, I live in a blue state, it usually goes blue, and the polls are all pointing towards a landslide. Why do I need to vote? This election cycle brought the lie to that argument. But the second one is that every time you want a more progressive future, you want us to push this further, but you don't show up to vote for the Democrat that best represents your idea, and you allow the Republican to only lose by a margin that they can argue, well, it's not even that far off. They can say the public isn't 100% with these Democrats trying to push for single payer or stopping us being in wars. It was watered down. People didn't even show up. That lowering the margin lowers the argument. So if you live in a blue state, you owe it to even if you think it's an automatic win, you have to vote to shore up that conversation. If you like what you hear, go tell somebody. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It always helps us out. See you on Twitter @HalSparks. Thanks to our chat room and all the people who gave super chats. We love you, Lady B. We'll see you next time, everybody. Awesome. Thank you, Lady B.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. I think we actually got through the whole show without a digital glitch or anything. Audio was actually okay.
I'm happy.
I can't believe it. It's a miracle. You're awesome. Okay, I adore you. I will talk to you later. Bye. Look at that. Chat room. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's a miracle. So yeah, this idea of if you believe in third parties, cool. So if you're going to vote for a third party, shut up and run as one. To start with, if you're going to be one of the most outspoken, we need third parties, and this two-party system is blah, 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 then run for office as a third party. In an office you can get city council, comptroller, be a judge who, offers yourself up in the Peace and Freedom Party or the Green Party or what have you. But the idea that anytime soon you're going to get a Green or even like any kind of secondary party like Peace and Freedom or any of these guys in a Senate seat is an absurdity. And the Senate will in many ways define the conversation on judges. And judges stick around forever. So if you do that, you give up your control over the judgeships. And what you do is if you think Democrats aren't progressive enough or you disagree with it, go to the convention, engage with your Democratic Party. But this idea that you want to, a revolution without doing any of the actual hard work, and marching is not the hard work. It's important, it's good, it's necessary, but it's not the work. And even Bernie Sanders, when he wanted to run, had to become a Democrat to do it. He used the Democratic Party as a super PAC, okay? Even though he didn't have, he touted the fact that he didn't have a super PAC, that's what the Democratic Party was for him. It was a super PAC. He got advantage of all the infrastructure and the coordination that the party could give him, and it operated since he's an independent. He borrowed them like any politician would borrow the use of a super PAC from somebody else. The only difference is he's allowed to coordinate with the Democratic Party in that circumstance. So he benefited from the infrastructure, he benefited from the outreach, benefited from the stage and the party structure provided for him by the Democrats. And then he went back to being an independent. He's not a Democrat anymore. So the idea that he's he caucuses with the Democrats as far as it goes, and that's totally cool and good for him. But if you think that he would have even been close if he'd have just run as an independent, he would have Ross Perot'd this or Ralph Nadered this to some degree, but he would have never had a legit shot of getting anywhere near it without the Democratic Party. So before you decry the Democratic Party's existence or its establishment, understand that without that establishment, there is no Bernie Sanders. Okay? Secondly, if you want to support what he ultimately wants, if the idea is that it must happen overnight or it has no worth, then none of his plans had any worth because they haven't happened yet. Democracy is an incremental process, and vilifying and making evil, like Max Baucus is the reason we don't have single payer available in the Affordable Care Act, almost single-handedly. Him and Mary Landrieu and a couple other blue dogs, 11 of them. They're the reason we don't have it. I think they're wrong. I think it was bad of them to do that. Do I think they're evil people? Do I think they qualify as evil? No. And are they a better vote than the Republican in their district? Absolutely. Because as much as they took out single payer in that, we wouldn't have had any of the Affordable Care Act had it been a Republican. Sometimes change has to be incremental or it goes away. And if you look at the best examples are Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the DACA Act. Because there was a lot of impatience about Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but the President Obama, he did a study with the military. He took more time with it than people wanted. People were very angry with him for taking the time that he did. But by the end of it, it became an act of Congress and it was permanent. Don't Ask, Don't Tell is gone. And that's because of how President Obama handled it. By the time we got around to DACA, he was running out of time and he was unpopular because his own party, his own supporters were so busy vilifying him nonstop that the idea that he could get DACA through any social pressure or bully pulpit or being able to push Republicans to actually do it was impossible. So he had to do it by an executive order, and it was undone. And so by, quote-unquote, holding his feet to the fire and making it happen too quickly and not supporting him around really normal policy levels and vilifying him and allowing him to be vilified, you effectively undermined any argument he had to make DACA an actual bill and set the DACA people up for a fall once a Republican got in. And that's a terrible way to handle this stuff. Just because you don't support everything somebody does, or you have a real distinct difference with certain Dems being more business friendly or less business friendly than others, that's fine. But the idea that it makes them evil or murderous or because Jimmy Dore uses the same language about Hillary Clinton that Alex Jones does. Demonic and vampiric and blood-sucking and murderous, and doesn't, literally sells the story that she doesn't care if children are flayed right in front of her. And that's disgusting. And its end result is that you get a president in Trump instead of her, because of the part that this messaging played. You get a president like Donald Trump, who has allowed more civilians to be killed in the military actions of the United States in 9 months than have happened in the 8 years preceding. And there is no reason to believe it will slow down. None. The deaths of civilians in Yemen and Syria and in the refugee areas in Afghanistan, there is absolutely no check on the violence that can be used against people. And the intelligence community in that circumstance, the military has been told, if you see a target and you think it's a target, blow it up. All the stuff that Chelsea Manning went to jail for discovering these Reuters photographers getting shot from the air, that affected policy, changed the rules of engagement in the United States, and the Obama administration and the Hillary Clinton administration did and would have handled it differently. The Trump response to that is, we need more of that video like Chelsea Manning saw, so that we can scare people into not messing with the United States. And if you think we're better off with Hillary Clinton than without Hillary Clinton, with Trump in office than Hillary Clinton, then you really have to look in the mirror and go, what are you okay with? Why are you okay with that? And if you are okay with, more civilian deaths for a time just so you can get your political end, how is that not terrorism? How is that not exactly what we complain about people who kill abortion doctors doing? Or how, we got to, occasionally you have to blow up a wedding party in Afghanistan to, because we're fighting a war here and it doesn't matter, So what if some people die of cancer or have, can't fight off their illness because they don't have insurance, because they gut the Affordable Care Act, or they lose their care? I'm too lazy to work hard to get the Affordable Care Act and to have single payer in it by marching about that. But we'll march against Trump once he's in there. Millions of us in the streets. So, anyways, it's an important argument, and the argument it disgusts me that they make that argument all the time, and they're okay with it. But again, I will not even go so far as to say that they're evil. And I like Anna Kasparian just hated my guts at Politicon last year because I wasn't a Bernie supporter. It was literally that I said I was voting for Hillary. You could just see it come on like a switch. And I'm like, guys, we got to be able to have a conversation about this. I have my reasons, and it's because I want what we all want. I just think it comes a different way. And what I see a lot of right now with Trump in office is a lot of these people who are like, there's no difference between the parties, and Hillary's evil, so Trump will bring about the revolution quicker, and all this stuff. They're all now, still arguing that Hillary is awful, making the same argument that Trump makes on his Twitter feed, and at the same time, almost out of a sense of personal guilt. They're saying, well, that's she would have been worse, which is false. It is a lie, and it's a lie you can tell yourself. You're broken someplace. You need help. You need to work on yourself. So, anyways, you guys are awesome, chat room. That's the Kool-Aid talking, not the person, about the real choices. That's right. So, yeah, we'll scroll back through the chat room real quick so I can talk to you. Tim Kaine did not have to be the choice for VP. He was right. He was to the right of Hillary. You can't say the Secretary of State Clinton couldn't have chosen someone to the left for the VP spot. She might have been able to or whatever, but they were trying to actually get elected across it. She won the popular vote. Her strategy worked. She won by 3 million votes. It was an electoral college issue more than anything else. And having somebody to the left wouldn't have made a lick of difference in the number of those votes. And I can't see, the ones that were really vilifying her coming out and saying, and Tim Kaine's a good dude. He's a good human being. And I also would argue that even using the terminology that he's to the right of her, is incorrect on the mechanics. Bernie Sanders is to the right of Hillary Clinton on guns by a large margin. It was not even debatable. So, I have to go study. Bye, guys. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Mariella. Be honest, it's Bernie's hair, right? I like Bernie's hair. Sometimes I think the far left forgets the Dem Party is broad and inclusive. We include Democrats, moderate Dems. I saw, people making on, that. This woman on Twitter the other day made this point. She was like, the Democratic Party is just as racist, and she was a liberal. Democratic Party is just as racist as the Republicans. They're just more subtle about it. And my only response was, you're an idiot. That is absurd. It's violently absurd. It's goofy. Yeah. Kaine had a bad presentation at the debate, but he was not a bad choice given what we were up against. No, he's a good guy and a reasonable choice for... He was, in many ways, they were looking for him to be her Joe Biden. He speaks Spanish. He was a Jesuit missionary. He's a good soul. There is no comparison between the Dems and the Republicans. And this idea, by the way, that anybody who talks to Wall Street is suddenly encompassed or sucked up by Wall Street, or that she gave these speeches and that meant she was going to fill her cabinet with Goldman Sachs people, which never would have happened because Dems wouldn't have allowed it. And then the idea that, and now Trump's cabinet is full of these idiots. It's outrageous how someone even talk to someone like that. Yeah. Well, I think you talk directly to them. I don't think I'm going to be a guest on Jimmy Dore's show anytime soon. There's a real enough already with the Hillary Bernie. It's going to push away those of us who supported Bernie but voted for Hillary. Let's move on. 2018 isn't far away. I think there's a good argument for that. Ultimately, but again, if she's talking about her book or going around, that's going to come up, and it's fine to deal with it. Yeah. I'm not sure what. Yeah, Hillary is a Democrat. She's a lifelong Democrat. Yeah, 90% of black women voted for Democrats. Right. Yeah. So that means 94% of black women are racist. Is that based on that woman's argument? I guess. I give a speech about Santa for $250. Yeah. Again, I've mentioned this before. Hillary got more from speaking at UCLA than she got for the alumni regents of the California university system than she got for speaking to Goldman Sachs. Right? But nobody ever said she's in the pocket of big university. Nobody said, well, she's giving these speeches. Nobody pays you that kind of money. unless you believe in education or something. I believe. Sadly enough, every president in the past few years had bankers or representatives of Wall Street in their cabinets, even Democrats. The system went wrong. First of all, not all bankers, quote unquote, or representatives of Wall Street are villainous, evil human beings. Some of them are just business people. This idea, corporations, is saying corporations are people is ignorant and stupid. But saying that using corporations as this blanket, like all corporations are the same, is equally as dumb, because the corporation for public broadcasting is a corporation. And so is Dow Chemical. And if you're saying, you could flip a coin to see which one you would let take care of your children, are you saying you would flip a coin between these two corporations because all corporations are bad? They're all the same. Does that make sense to everybody? Speaks to are probably evil, give all the money to charity. And if the people she speaks to are probably evil, give all the money to charity. How they are capitalists, they exist within a system designed to exploit, if not well regulated. If not well regulated. But capitalism in and of itself is not an evil system by itself. It just isn't. It's not. Right, YouTube's a corporation, Google's a corporation, Apple's a corporation. You use a corporation's phone every day. You use a corporation's social media every day. You use a corporation's phone every day, like a phone system every day. Not all nonprofits are the same. Citizens United and the Humane Society are not the same people. And so this idea that any Wall Street people is bad Wall Street people just makes it makes your argument impotent. Capitalism system is not a thing. It is an interactive process. Right. It's an ideology of how business works. And by the way, we don't have a fully capitalist system. We have a mix of both capitalized businesses and individuals, but not based on held capital per se, because we can get loans. It is not simply like a Romanic or monarchical capitalist system where I have the gold and therefore I dictate what the rules are. In this system, people, and that system needs to be more equitable, but people can get loans and change their lives through that without having capital in and of themselves. They borrow that capital from someone else. Always keeping me up to date and well informed each week, as well as the chat room people saying, thank you, Natalie. Well, thanks for joining us, and thanks for taking one of the foster kittens, and I hope he's wonderful. Because again, if you just say corporations or you say things like banksters or whatever, what happens is your argument gets dismissed because you have an ATM card. You use a bank. If banksters were banksters and it didn't matter that all banks are just inherently bad, then why do you have a checkbook? Communism is an ideology like libertarianism. It can't exist as a governmental policy. That's its problem. It's a fantasy. Credit unions are not banks. That's true. They're co-ops. That's true. And by the way, I'm with a credit union. I use a credit union. I moved my money a few years ago because of this. But I also don't think that makes everybody that was working at my bank evil, or the people that were working in there evil. They just aren't. Yeah, that's right, Brad. Communism, libertarianism, anarchism are fantasy ideologies. They're Ayn Randian nonsense in most cases. It's just like how I'd like to run my life because I don't like people better than Wells Fargo. Yeah, no. Not the rank and file, some of the top members, right. But there are also some top members who are fine. They might be a little dismissive of humanity because they work at, on a bank on such an incremental level of money that they just kind of lost sight, or they might be out of touch at times. But they're not evil people. And you can't make that case. You can't paint with a brush without saying, without somebody being able to box your argument into nothingness. You know, just calling you a pinko commie, that kind of idea. You know, so the important thing is what I'm arguing for is more specific languaging. And if our worry is that Republicans are bigoted in how they discuss things, we cannot use equally generalized bigoted language or prejudiced language ourselves and expect a different result. Dr. Olivo, you get called pinko commie all the time. Maybe it's your shirt choice, you know? There's other colors. You could be a beigey commie. You know, I'm sure I would be a you know, kind of navy commie right now. Yeah, pinko was one of the attachments on our Carter 360. During the Democratic convention, I started to fear Hillary would lose after I saw everyone having rousing speeches, and her, in my humble opinion, of course. Credit union ATMs are scarce. I wonder if banks squeeze them out. No, they don't squeeze them out. They're just more available. Old Navy commie, right? We need a new lexicon for America. I mean, it's a great idea, you know. I take the fun out of arguing. Oh, by no means. No, again, like I said, there's this. Here's the rule, and this is how I kind of operate, just so you know. When I call someone a moron, or I say dummy, or I fight back against it, again, I'm using phrases where it's based on what they're saying, not who they are intrinsically. You know, I tend to do like my jokes will tend to be more in the I don't know what you're smoking, then you must have been dropped on your head. You know, that it's not permanent. You can come around. Everybody always give somebody an exit ramp to be a decent human being. Otherwise, they'll just get entrenched in how they feel, and you're stuck with them that way, right? You got to offer them an ability to leave gracefully. Otherwise, they won't. They just won't. They'll, you know, it'll just be violent, you know, permanent rhetoric, right? They'll just get to, well, then I'd rather be, you know, right than happy, you know. So they'll get stuck in that. So the idea is that if you're going to have somebody, you know, if you're going to talk about somebody, what I do is outside of that is that I don't use, like with Dems, a lot of times I'll say that's stupid instead of you're stupid along those lines if I'm being directly insulting. Or I'll use verbal irony or whatever to cut against the idea, but not the human being. And I'll certainly never insist that even if the results of someone's actions might be dangerous, that person intends the evil that might come from it all the time. They can be mistaken, horribly, horribly mistaken, which is what I think Jimmy Dore and Susan Sarandon are. I don't think in essence they're evil people. I just think they're ignorant and they're willing to accept too much to get what they want as far as what can happen. Local Chris Kelly not doing a good job reaching out to minority groups. He didn't even do our Q&A for the LGBT paper I write for the Windy City Times while the other candidates did. Okay. Good to know. Fine line for the receiver. They just got offended simply by raising the word. That's fine though. But again, just because someone's offended doesn't mean they're right. You can be offended and mistaken. You can be offended in abstract. He didn't add much to Hillary's campaign because he lacks charisma, not because where he's in the political spectrum. She should have chosen someone good who has a better personality. I agree. I mean, I think that's the Joe Biden argument. You know, is that you need a Joe for your VP every time. Just to, you know, the guy like, oh, I'd love a hug from that guy. You know, if you're going to argue with it, like they're all things being equal on a political level and what they're for as far as being on the team with what you want to do. Yeah, I'd rather be happy than fat, Jack Caroline. The pool sucked with neighbors, FICA street leaves and bread. I think Progs really don't get politics. They get policy, but not the politics required to get there. That's an argument. That's true. Yeah, I would say that there's a genuine reason for that. Problem is that people who think that the problem is that the people who think this way are not here. We live in a balkanized media world. This is true, although it's out there for them to find. The point is, yeah, we might be fragmented, but people stumble on Ben Shapiro lectures and stuff, and then it leads them down the road to red pill and racism. So there should be an equal number of stuff online and available to correct that. And they might not see it right away, and they might not be in the chat room today or whatever, but they might watch this eventually, and that's got to be the goal. Doran Sarandon are selfish and an unfortunate example of white privilege on the left. Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made for that. AM Joy was really good this morning. I love AM Joy, and there's tons of lefties who are like, ugh, I can't stand AM Joy. Even Majority Report, Sam Cedar and those guys are like, ugh, if I had to watch, Joy Reid. I'm like, you do realize you're being insane, right? Again, Joy Reid is a decent human being. She's a good person. Period. She is. Full stop. You can disagree with her interpretations of some issues occasionally, or you can say she isn't prioritizing what you want her to prioritize. But questioning her humanity is a mental illness that you have, not her. The problem with Biden is I'm not sure you respect women in charge as much as men. I don't know that I would get that as the case. I think there's a strong chance Elizabeth Warren could run. I like her a lot. I think she's feisty and strong. I think she's got verve and energy, and she's charming. I think she cares about all the right things. So I think, yeah, you're right. I like Elizabeth Warren to run. I think she and Gavin Newsom would be a good pair. I personally, I don't know where Kamala Harris is in her potentiality. I know she wants to run or whatever. I think she'd be an awesome head of the DOJ as a prosecutor. As a former prosecutor and AG of California. So yeah. I quit listening to NPR a long time ago. It talks about politics, doesn't really get what's going on. If you're attacking the front runner, you're not getting the politics. Yeah. Especially, and you can absolutely go after a front runner if they have a problem with what they're doing or they need to do more of that. But if you spend the majority of your time attacking the front runner, then you're not helping, and you're certainly not going to convince that front runner that your way is actually a better way of doing things, because you'll just sound like an extremist who they can't deal with. They'll just stiff arm you, and they would be stupid not to. And you could attack, where Hillary Clinton was on. That's a good example. $15 minimum wage. So Hillary Clinton was for a 12-minute incrementing to the $15, growing it over time. Studies coming back from a bunch of cities that there's this secondary aspect that people cut hours when they have to be forced to put a $15 an hour minimum wage, and it actually negatively affects poor people more so. Now this is businesses using those people hostage essentially to do this, but ultimately to secure their bottom line, what they do is they just hire more part-time workers, give people less of a rotation, and they only have to, if they can get the work done in 8 hours, they don't have an ancillary job, that person loses their job or their hours. They just cut back on hours, and so those people lose money. They might have $15 an hour, but they've got 10 hours fewer a week. They actually get a cut in pay. So how do you get to the $15 an hour? How do you get to a living wage without that effect, right? One of the arguments is you start at 12 and you get their overtime to 15, right? But when Hillary suggested that, she was evil, right? Thanks so much, Astro Music Man. Have a great time at work. You can't talk about the need for gun control and then you just think mass shootings are staged. Yeah, well, again, you can't talk to those people. Some of them might just have lead poisoning from hanging out in unventilated gun ranges their whole lives. So you're not going to actually have a conversation with them. Republican Party used to be more of a bigger tent. Yeah, when it was the Democrats a long time ago, before they switched names, right? States were stealing Sanders' fire on the $15 million by doing it themselves, even while I was making it a platform issue. Yeah, but at the same time, and then it didn't turn out to actually work. Most bills are that 15 gradually rise year by year. Actually, they don't jump immediately at $15. I agree, but the cities that have done it have seen that that companies and businesses end up cutting hours. So people who got that $15 a week, an hour wage hike lost time in terms of weeks. So they actually lost money in the process. And again, it is reasonable to have that argument. You could say, okay, well, we do 15, and it might be temporary that people lose some hours, but eventually the business picks up because more people have money to spend. It helps businesses. Not all businesses will cut hours to do that. It will eventually help everybody. No one is losing a job because of this, and it kind of evens out. We hope they don't take a dip, and we'll supplement it. If they're on the poverty line, they'll get this support structure while this transition is happening. That's an argument for right away 15, okay? But if you're also saying, yeah, but it may not work, so perhaps it'd be better if we started at 12 and worked our way up over a year and a half or 2 year strategy to that, so business had time to acclimate. Cool. That's an argument for still getting to 15. It's just how, right? But you can't say the person who wants to jump to it, you're just trying to wreck it, man. If you jump to 15, obviously you want it to fail. That wouldn't be an argument. So anybody who wants to start at 12 and get there doesn't want it to fail either. But this argument that both of them have to be evil in their wrongness is problematic, to borrow one of Carrie's favorite words. So I take 3 Imitrex for my headaches, and 9 pills cost $175 retail, and I pay $1 for a copay. Saying this now because I got my refill earlier this morning, right? So if you lose your insurance or whatever, that becomes an enormous expense. So saying that it's okay if people lose their Affordable Care Act and they lose their coverage. If 22 million people lose their coverage over the next couple of years, that's what it needs to get people mad enough to realize we should have a single payer. Then those people just got to be sacrificed. They got to be cut off. That's why I was okay with Hillary not federally imposing 15 everywhere. That was her point. We should start with a $12 federal minimum wage and work our way up. And she wasn't. People didn't attack her as why are you slowing this whole thing down? They went, you hate working people. It was this vitriolic conversation. So anyways, that's the lesson. And so obviously I've gone way over time today, whatever, but I want to talk to you guys afterwards. Thank you, by the way. I want to jump in here and feed this. The stream wasn't too bad today. Let's see. Thank you, Donna, for your gift, and Tom and Charles. Thank you so much, and Carl and Carter and Natalie and TLK Knitting and Billy and Julie. Thank you guys so much for your super chats today. Immensely helpful. Thanks a lot. It's helped the show, especially when I'm on the road, get a little bit better technology wise. We had I think our first hotel show on the road using the kind of new setup that I've had to troubleshoot over time because of you guys giving the super chat. That's where that money goes to. And today I think we literally had our first moment where I didn't have robotic or broken signal to Chicago, right? So that's awesome. Yeah. So anyways, and on a cool personal note, before I can afford to fly home today. That's right. I can't have 2 shows tonight. That Tuesday night, and some of you may have seen the thing, I was raised, as we put it, to the sublime degree of Master Mason on Tuesday, and it was a proud moment for me, and an honor to kind of do the same thing my grandfather had done, and all of my friends at the lodge who I've met, and now in my travels, as I go around, more and more people are kind of coming up to me because they either know, because they follow me on media or whatever, that they know I'm a Mason, and they are, or their father was, or their grandfather was. and it ends up being a really sweet conversation, because ultimately the conversation boils down to is that you should fight for your belief system all you want, and you should adamantly argue your belief system as best you can, but you never in the process can question or denigrate someone's humanity in the process as best you can. Some people are off the chart. Some people are straight up Nazis, whatever. But most people aren't, and so that distinction is super important. So yes, I am a Mason, Lord Dracul. Better than being a master with a fishing line, masturbator. How do you know? How do I know if the moon landing was fake or not? I went to the here in Huntsville, they have the Space and Rocket Center, right, where all the Project Paperclip Nazis all came after the war, right? They're the ones who were in charge of it. They started NASA and all that kind of stuff, and they jokingly go out to the back area where they've got this recreation of the landing site, and they're like, yeah, this is where we shot the moon landing thing. They'll joke about it the whole time or whatever. No, we landed on the moon. Get over it. They do not allow atheists in. That is true. You can't be a Mason because you can't take an obligation if you're a Mason. They have no way of, knowing that you mean your obligation if you're an atheist in that regard. And plus, there's an intrinsic, the point of Masonry is secular open government, and the idea of things like public education and the ability to talk about politics and religion, no matter what your beliefs are, as long as you have a belief, because that will make you more understanding of someone else's beliefs. Thanks, Carter. I'm glad the stream worked. No problems with your phone. I think it's working. You guys are definitely helping, so thank you. I think agnosticism, not atheism, is the most logical position. I agree. You can be agnostic and join. You just kind of have to have a belief in some form of greater something outside yourself. So that's never been a problem for me. That's cool, Dr. Oliva. And it's not for everybody. I don't get that part about obligation. I can't explain it to you because it's largely secret, but that's all I can say. And thank you, Carrie. Did everybody like the broadcast? Everybody? Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to sign off now. When you figure it out, Hal, let me know. Okay, I will. Yeah. Christian believing in strong secular government. See, there you go, Billy. Yeah, I'm still curious. Absolutely. And it's worth curiosity. There's plenty to read. I mean, I never thought I would be reading the works of a Confederate general and find it more supportive of racial rights than some of the modern books I've read by people, who aren't Masons and purport to be, for equality. It's weird, but it's great and it's very important. Thank you, Carrie. I like Amy Klobuchar as well. She's great. Anyways, I'll take. You guys are awesome. I definitely, we went on this rant left over from that one break where I went off on Jimmy and Susan. But yeah, I wish my Huntsville friends could do their impression of AG. Well, have them come down to the show. All they got to do is bring diapers, and they can get into the show for free. So there you go. Even the ones who made sure God and Christianity was not explicitly mentioned. Yeah, they were deists. They believed in they were specific, and the Catholic Church wrote a bull against the Masons because they're too open to everyone's religious beliefs. That was it. Evangelicals. One of the reasons why Alex Jones and the evangelical crowd hate the Masons is because we're cool with everybody's belief systems. We believe that you should fight for people's rights to believe that, even if you disagree with those beliefs. And that's the essence of, our society, is that we should all be able to peacefully share our religious philosophies without fear of repercussion or being hurt. Can diapers be used? No. Do I have any plans to visit the UK in the future? I do, actually. As a matter of fact, it's kind of Masonically real. I'm going to visit the Grand Lodge there in a few months. So there you go. I bet they hate Unitarian Universalists too. Yeah, that's exactly the argument, right? Is there a women's chapter in the U.S.? No, there's the Order of the Eastern Star, which is the female equivalent or whatever. There's a, but Masonry is a fraternity, so it's men only. But there are female equivalents, is the idea. So yeah. And many of the same lessons and symbology and all that kind of stuff are used in the Order of the Eastern Star. It's just the offshoot. It's just the women's version. But it is segregated by gender for a reason. Yeah. But I love it. It's been an extraordinary circumstance for me. My buddy Jason Charles Miller, who's in the band Godhead, who I would not have known was a Mason, surprised the hell out of me when I found out. Participated in my degree last. Hey, Carl's got an oven. Look at that! Congratulations, Carl. That's awesome. What's their stance on transgender people? Well, if somebody was trans and they were becoming or identified as a man, they could be a Mason. You just can't be a fool or a madman. And you have to be over 18, and you have to join of your own free will, and no one will ask you to join. You have to ask to join. And I don't cook. Well, you're going to start, Carl. Yeah. A trans man could be a Mason, no question. As long as they get along with the guys in the lodge and they meet all the other criterion as a human being. That wouldn't be a deal breaker by any stretch. But they would have to believe in God or some sort of deity or multiple. You can be a polytheist. You could believe in Zeus if you wanted to. It doesn't matter, but you have to believe in something, and you have to. Yeah, that's me. I'm becoming a man. That's it. I'm becoming a man. There you go. Is there any chance of you visiting the northeast of the UK? Is there a university class? I would like you to guest lecture. Absolutely, Nicole. I would love to go up there and give a lecture. I will come. The nice thing about the UK is it's not hard to travel everywhere, so we will make that happen. I insist. I can't join. My wife says I'm both a fool and a madman. Right. What's the Masons' general purpose? To make good men better. That's the essence of it. How about Mother Nature is greater than himself? Yeah, absolutely. If you believe in it as a conscious force, as opposed to just, generic cells acting on cells. That's the same. Beware Best Buy delivery schedule 1 to 4 in the afternoon. Could be 10:30 in the morning. Okay, I consider myself warned, Carl. But I'm glad you have an oven. Yeah, it's fascinating. I'll do a whole stream on Masonry soon. Now that I'm a 3rd degree Mason, I'm a Master Mason, I feel like I can actually start speaking of it where I'm not talking out of school. Yeah, and so there you go. Yeah, it's 1 to 4 somewhere, Carl. That's right. Thanks, Tom. So, anyways, I'll do a whole, bit about Masonry sometime soon, so people can get a picture of what why I did it, what it means to me, all that kind of stuff. 65 HK. Oh my God, Carl, that's amazing. 64K HDR. Is it curved? Wow. Do they invite atheists to speak? No. Yeah. No. Most Masonic education and stuff like that. We give like charity. We give a lot of money to like teachers and stuff, and so we'll give them an award and a little wall plaque and some money, for their class or for themselves. That kind of stuff. Our lodge does that regularly, or we'll donate to, St. Jude's is, started as a Masonic organization. The Midnight Mission in Los Angeles, the biggest homeless mission on the West Coast, that was started by Masons. Most of the hospitals where kids can go without ever paying a bill, they were started by Masons. That's part of it. Yeah. So, there's a lot, to it. But I like the educational aspect of it, the fraternal aspect of it, the idea that I'm surrounded by, brothers everywhere I go because of it, and I know who they are, and I know they're good people. Mostly I hear of conspiracies about Masons. Yeah, that's absurd and stupid. And it's not that there haven't been powerful Masons who've crafted the country and understand that New World Order, when it was put on the money, was in reference to democracy being a new way of organizing human beings on the planet, because up till then it had been all monarchies and theocracies. So democracy was a brand new order. It was a new way for people to get together. Citizens being able to decide for themselves. No one imposing a religion on them. These are all Masonic ideas that showed up in the founding fathers. So 14 of the signers were Masons, and most of them crafted this stuff. So, From Hell is an example of one. Good movies, but rather libelous, perhaps. Absolutely, But the idea, if you look at From Hell, is that they ended up killing the bad guy. The Masons went, "Yeah, you violated our order, so they killed the villain in it, they broomed themselves like a sort of mafia idea." Very crazy stuff about Masons. I saw a documentary about Masons that was pretty good and showed them fairly. That's good. Yeah, I think Masons have something there. No wonder Catholics are scared. Yeah, I mean, understand this, that any religion taken to its orthodox level is at its root anti-democratic. It has to be, because if you can't believe anybody else, I mean, the Ten Commandments themselves are anti-democratic. The first commandment is a violation of the First Amendment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make any graven images. That's the violation of freedom of religion, violation of freedom of speech. Both of those things, freedom of expression. Like, you can't understand that. So anytime somebody who's like, "I'm a constitutionalist, we're a Judeo-Christian country, we should put up 10 commandments," so like, you do realize that the founding fathers intentionally put in stuff in violation of them, and they ordered them the same way as a kind of shutdown of us using the Ten Commandments as law, because they violate they set it up specifically. Knowing this, yeah, but technically speaking, if a cardinal is a Mason, he can be excommunicated for it. Some Catholics, there's tons of Catholic Masons in the country, but they do it under the idea that if anybody bothered, they would be, yeah. The sequel is From Queens. Guess who's turn, right? I'm a former Catholic as well, Julie. There you go. So, but the idea is that they literally, the founding fathers put in the document this idea that we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of association, literally that turns against the initial two primary commandments that can command a singular God. And evangelicals and Catholics in general have the most stoutly organized religion that there is. Orthodox, there's Orthodox almost everybody, but those two particular organizations, the Catholic Church wrote a bull against them, ordered the death of the Templars, and that's been kind of a sticking point. The Masons have been accepting of Jews since the 1700s, since they effectively started as a regular order organization. Jews and Muslims have been members since Masonry started, and that. If you look at the history of how Jews were accepted into organizations in this country, that's incredibly progressive. So I think it's a beautiful thing. They were at one time segregated because of some civil war, because of how as America panned out. Some southern states didn't. The southern jurisdiction did not want black people in. The northern jurisdiction was fine with it. Eventually, the southern jurisdiction came around, but initially what happened was they believed that black people should have the right to be Masons. They just wanted to have segregated lodges. That segregation went away 100 years ago, maybe more, depending on which district you're in. Those were called Prince Hall Masons. They still exist today. They're black-only Masonic halls. The regular Masonic halls are anybody could join. Prince Hall are completely black, so they're technically the only segregation that happens are black only, not white only or anything else. My lodge has a Greek, like Orthodox Christians and Persians and black people and white guys and black guys. Like, it's a whole mix of human beings. They're all awesome. I love them. I'm so glad to know these guys. And the phrases, for those of you who don't know, and this is turning into another kind of storyline along these lines, but a lot of phrases we use in English about speaking to people respectfully, like somebody being on the level, for example. When you talk about somebody being on the level, that's a Masonic phrase, because the level, square, and compass are the emblems of Masonry, these working Masonic tools for symbolic meaning about how you're supposed to behave. You use a compass to circumscribe your actions, to keep your actions within the bounds of civil society. You use the level, though, to recognize that no matter who you are in your station in life, rich or poor, we all end up in the grave. We're all on the same path, and we're all equal in the eyes of whatever creator you believe in. Yeah, all by the level, by the square, by the all-seeing eye. That's right. And so we're all on the level. And so when someone's being fair with you, they're being on the level. That phrase comes from Masonry for by no accident, because the idea is that Masons will be on the level with you. We have a code of behavior that we act on. About you don't cheat people and that kind of stuff. And the irony that it's been turned into this monstrosity by people. Yeah, Rudyard Kipling was a Mason. Mozart was a Mason. Abbott and Costello were Masons. Peter Sellers was a Mason. Count Basie was a Mason. Prince's dad was a Mason. 14 of our presidents, basically half of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, the drafters of it, Ben Franklin, George Washington, and this is and if you look at them, they're the ones who, even in an imperfect way, were arguing for the equality of everyone and the idea of education for everyone. They were the people starting free libraries and all that. Jackie Mason a Mason? No, ironically, I don't think so. I don't think he was. Yeah, by the square. That's a military phrase. That's right. And the reason they call being drilled on something, getting your third degree, is because getting your third degree in Masonry is incredibly hard. It's usually one of the biggest tests people pass. It's an oral test, and you have to be, you're asked a lot of questions, it's like being interrogated to some degree, but it's because to see how well you know what you've been taught and what you learn and what you know about the, grammar and rhetoric and architecture and geometry and, all these things that are important to you, because as a Mason, you're required to know these things. You're required to learn these things. It's like a college in many ways, for these kind of ideas. So, the words are right. I blurred the order of the macro verse. It's great because we all float. If you join, you float. Yeah. So, what degree? I'm a third degree Mason. I have officially joined the Scottish Rite, though, as well. There's two offshoots: the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. The York Rite is specifically Christian. To be in the York Rite, you have to swear an oath to protect the Christian faith, and the Scottish Rite is more philosophical. Like you sort of swear to protect all religions. Now, a lot of guys join the York Rite saying, I swear an oath to protect the Christian religion, in the same way that I've sworn an oath to protect all religions. So, of course, I'll protect Christianity from anybody trying to keep it from existing, because it has a right to exist. And this, I will protect the secular right of anybody to exist. So technically, people join, R-I-T-E. And I will get, I'm going for my 32nd degree. One day I'll be a 33rd, just so I can freak Alex Jones out even more. I'm getting my first 14 degrees over the next few months. Right, R-I-T-E. But I'm a third-degree Master Mason, which in the standard Blue Lodge, that's all there is. After the third degree, it's all ancillary bodies. You join the Scottish Rite or you join the York Rite. You have to join the York Rite to become a Templar Knight, and I really want to do that. I really want to join the Templars really bad. So I will probably join the York Rite as well, because it's just a lot of fun. And I'll probably end up being a Shriner and get a little fez too, so that I can help with raising money for the hospitals and all that stuff. But literally, the California Masons that I belong to have basically an old folks home in Covina. It's this Masonic retirement home that we fund with our charity and with our works and all that kind of stuff. That's been there for years. It's terrific. They have a gathering there every year to kind of meet everybody, but it's one of the best facilities I've ever seen in my life. So it's nice to see that in play. It is a movie, and I need to see that. And I need to see. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen obviously the original one, and I've read the book, so I'm excited to see it. Oh no, you'll be chasing the Da Vinci Code. That's right, I will be chasing it. Before I became a Mason, I went to the Roslin Chapel in Scotland when I was in Edinburgh doing the comedy festival, and it was fantastic just walking around there in this ancient chapel and seeing all these Masonic signs that had been put up there, 16th century and that kind of stuff. They found a cornerstone in Egypt in an obelisk that fell over that had the Masonic sign on it. Wait, is a 32 dog what? 30-second dog what? It's more an adventure than a horror. It's more horrific horror adventure. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Hal is a 32nd degree? No, I will be, but not yet. Somebody tried to type on their phone. That looks like a phone autofill. Fix it. Edinburgh is generally just amazing. It's like Disney meets Harry Potter. It absolutely is. And the castle is incredible. And the Roslin Chapel that they use in the Da Vinci Code and they talk about a lot with all the... it's incredible. It's just... the amount of history. You play 32nd degree chess. I'm playing D&D on Monday with Jason Scott Miller for a show that he does called Starter Kit. Starter set? Starter Kit, yeah. It's for Dungeons & Dragons. So close, yeah. So if one joins the Scottish Rite, is there an equivalent to the Templars? There's a degree in the Scottish Rite that is, I think it's kind of like the Knights of Kadosh or something along those lines. I'll have to look up what the name of it actually is. But you are effectively a Knights Templar because it's just another word for it. It's like Zarathustra and Zoroaster are the same people, is the same god. Okay, so... the Knight Rose Croix, which is the Knights of the Red Cross, that's effectively, by the way, that's where the Red Cross came from, was initially started as well, where that came from. They end up being sort of fall into, being a Knights Templar as well. And then the Knight Kadosh, which is but there's several knights. You become a Knight Commander of the Temple, which is also be a Templar Knight, a Knight of the Sun or a Prince Adept, the Grand Scottish Knight of St. Andrew. You earn all these degrees through both seeing a lecture and experiencing it and learning certain things and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, anybody gets a chance, go to Edinburgh. It's glorious. And try not to go when the comedy festival is there unless you're just a huge comedy fan, because it is just overrun with human beings. It's normally a very touristy place anyway, so there's plenty to see, and there'll be plenty of people from all over the world when you go there. But I love it. I love Edinburgh. And if you can play a cleric or multi-class given the rules, how one campaign I played such a character that GM banned the class combo for being OP. I'm actually playing a half elf fighter. They're signing me a character because they have certain numbers, whatever. It's the secrecy and the obligation. Look up in the train of the castle. It was one of the few times my jaw literally dropped. Yeah. So if one joins the Sky, is there an equivalent to the Templars? Why are there so many conspiracy theories about the Masons? Yeah, because they're the idea is they call it a secret society, but it's really a society with secrets. And the reason you have those secrets is because you want people to earn their way through it. You don't want somebody to just kind of read up on it and pretend that they have the same morals as you do, that they've been through the same test. And in many ways, a lot of it is so specific that it's like It's like you wouldn't just hand out a doctorate for brain surgery either. You'd make people go through a class, and after they take that class, you wouldn't just let people operate on somebody's skull. Do black and white Masons belong to separate lodges? In the South, do they even recognize each other as brothers? They all recognize each other as brothers. Lodges are not segregated these days because they have to be in anywhere. Some Prince Hall lodges, the black lodges, exist simply because they've been that way for a long time, and it's the neighborhood. If a white person who moved into the neighborhood, or a Hispanic person, or an Asian person came, there are tons of Filipino Masons. There's an Iranian group of Masons that meets in absentia because they can't have a lodge in Iran because of the mullahs won't allow them. So they have a lodge in California that they meet at in secret, essentially, which is amazing. So there's no segregation in lodges now except just by circumstantial segregation. Like if there's one in Watts or something like that, and everybody who drives to that particular lodge is black, that's why. But it's not because somebody else couldn't join that lodge or they couldn't join another lodge, if that helps. They're separated based on church, and in the South, the churches are still very segregated. Yeah, a lot of times. Do white and black Masons... ACT, I went to Edinburgh Fringe last year, performed some improv, loved it there. Oh, ACT, that's amazing. Also get to the Scottish Highlands, though. Very different from the Inn. You can meet Nessie in the locks up there. That's true. It's absolutely true. You might actually see her poking her head out, floating by. Like Bowser's muscle going through the waters, Are there lowlands? Of course there are. There's a story about you take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll get to Scotland before you. That whole bit, right? That's actually from. It's like a Masonic warning. That was when Masons were being killed, and that I'll find it. Yeah. Because there was a song, like Masons love singing songs in lodges. I'll find it eventually, but there was, the root of the you take the high road and I'll take the low road was a reference. Oh yeah, okay. So one of the reasons the Masons formed is because besides being like a Masonic group, was because there was a war between the Catholics and the Protestants and the Presbyterians, and all these groups were bifurcating, and nobody could have a conversation without killing each other. And there was a point where soldiers tied Presbyterian prisoners to posts that they erected at low tide at the seashore, where the prisoners waited till the sea came in and drowned them. And the practice was commemorated in one of the most famous Scottish folk songs. I'll take the high road and you'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland in 40. For me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. And the idea is that if you take the low road, they'll drown you. That was in reference. It was kind of like, Ring Around the Rosie, which was really about, the plague. Ashu, we all fall down. So you start sneezing, you'll give it to us. I appreciate all this info. Thank you. Absolutely, Charles. You could be an Outlander with that accent. I've got Scottish background. Middle name is McGee, but the C was taken out like 4 generations ago. We used to think we were Irish, because there's lots of Irish people come, But it turns out it's a Scottish McGee after all. It was originally spelled McHugh, MacGhough, whatever. But they literally McGee became McGee. McHugh became McGee over time just because the bloody well, had that big. Their accent was so tough, It's like Lee and Ree, and a lot of Koreans are named Ree in the United States because of how they pronounce their L's. And when they came across to Ellis Island, they would literally write an R instead of it. Okay, so we decide which country's who. The Chinese people can be Lee because we know they really mean Lee, but the Koreans are coming on later, so we'll put them in. That's an R. We'll use an R for them so we can separate them and know what, because Korean Lees and Chinese Lees are different families. Yeah. Let's see why the obelisk. This is a fun conversation though, like just to have it with you guys about this stuff, because but again, this will have to be a whole video in and of itself, and it's already an hour over. Yeah. Jesuits in Japan in the movie Silence of the Andrew Garfield led, right? I understand we have McKenna, Irish and Egan, going back to see the old cemeteries and staying in the castle used to belong to our family. Yeah, so I, in kind of, like, you know, the funny thing is, I recommend, if anybody wants to read Freemasons for Dummies, if you're into it at all, if you're interested, you know, no one will ever ask you to join the Masons. If you're interested in joining, you have to go to a meeting, see if you get along with the people at that particular lodge, check out a couple of different lodges, because it's a personality and emotional relationship, friendship thing. All your Masons across the world are now your brothers forever and ever and ever. But where you join can have an effect on that, yeah. Like so I started reading this one book, Morals and Dogma. I'll show you. I started taking notes of stuff let's see, it's a little bright. See if it'll move in close. Maybe that'll do it. Right. So I started underlining parts that I found fascinating, and I literally was at one point. Let's see if I can get it. Like, it's too bright. It was like I was underlining the whole book. Like I was literally I took so many notes. I decided at one point to print out the notes and the stuff that I had, made notes of, and I started changing certain notes had certain different types of things instead of just highlighting everything. Like blue highlighting and yellow highlighting had to mean something else because it was just getting out of hand. And then I started underlining certain stuff, to give them different categories. I'm doing the same thing. Alan, where did I love it so deep? Yeah. It was stunning. And at one point I was like, I'm going to underline this whole damn book, and it seemed like the first 5 chapters were about Trump. But less glory is more liberty. When the drum is silent, reason sometimes speaks. Like that's a really beautiful sentiment. Let's see, what's a good one to like the kind of, here you go. Truth conquers slowly. There is a wondrous vitality in error. Truth indeed, for the most part, shoots over the heads of the masses. Or if an error is prostrated for a moment, it is up again in a moment, and as vigorous as ever. It will not die when the brains are out, and the most stupid and irrational errors are the longest lives. So, truth takes some time, but people can be mistaken quickly. You can sell this thing. To hold the full cup of thoughts to the thirsty lips of men, to give them all the true ideas of a deity, to harmonize conscience and science are the province of philosophy. Morality is faith in full bloom. Like the number of really cool concepts and philosophies in this. Liberty is a curse to the ignorant and brutal. That's amazing. Like that concept. The arc of the moral universe long and bends towards justice. Yeah. And to read some lines 3 times. Yeah, some of this Masonry for Dummies. Yeah, I thought it was a little ridiculous too, but they actually recommend it if you want to break down what the kind of concept is or whatever. There's a couple of things on. If you want to learn about Masonry, you just see the most boring videos on YouTube. Find guys who are like, this is what it's like to be a Mason, and he's wearing a tie and standing in front of a little thing, and this is our lodge in Wisconsin, whatever. That'll give you a more realistic view of pride in unsound theories is worse than ignorance. Humility becomes a Mason. Nothing is nobler than work. The rest that follows labor should be sweeter than the rest which follows rest. A single thought sometimes suffices to overturn a dynasty. A word well spoken, the deed fitly done, even the feeblest or humblest cannot help but have their effect. The power of a free people is often at the disposal of a single and seemingly unimportant individual. Like he basically is teaching vigilance about democracy in this book. Like you do not mess around with democracy because it's too easy to fall apart. Truth is too hard to keep and manage, because dumb is so you can knock it over. Destruction is so much easier than construction. Sounds a bit like my favorite fortune cookie. Nothing's more dangerous than sincere ignorance. Right. Skipped ahead. I'm a Gemini. I read the end of books. Pride is a vice which inclines one to find it in others yet overlooking thyself, right? Yeah, there's a ton of that in there. So I like, in kind of the lesson work, and you can probably see in how I've discussed things on the show and how I inform things, and also how, like, I try to be more funny than angry on Twitter about stuff even that I take very seriously, is because I want to use my best weapon against these things, but also as a, you know, I'm sure being a Mason has informed my ability to, like, be a little more patient with people, even if they have their a difference of opinion. The book that I was reading was Morals and Dogma, which by Albert Pike. And again, if you were asking me if I'd be reading a book by a Confederate general at some point in my life, I would have slapped you silly. But he was actually an abolitionist in his life, and ultimately, and was thought it wrong that the South was, you know, the ones that were fighting for, because he actually thought that the South would, to some degree, become more of a democracy than the North was becoming, and you know, and that's what the fight was about. And he was one of these guys who, if it was a Mason on the battlefield from the other side, would care for them and stuff, that this was a gentleman's war. It was, you know, it's a different time. But ultimately, when he wrote that book, was years later, after it was all over, and he, you know, he was against slavery and against both bigotry and prejudice, especially on religious and racial lines. And the book is pretty impressive in that term. It's called Morals and Dogma, and it's about the difference, you know, about like what it means to be moral versus attaching yourself to a dogma just to pretend that you're moral. I've tried to achieve that virtue of patience just by getting older. I'm sure it's a factor, Carl. Yeah. Yeah, it's a long book. Julie is right. It's 1,100 and some odd pages, even in the digital short form. And that's from a video game I haven't up my walls. I'm late for my Masons class. Can I copy somebody's notes? Professor Allen, can I do some extra credit? Absolutely. Yeah, Albert Pike. There, you know, and again, you talk about the statue issue. There's a statue of Albert Pike in Washington, D.C. It's outside, but it's on the Masons' grounds. It's not on public lands. So I don't think we'll have a problem with it being up and people dealing with that or whatever. But it's, but the book itself, and you know, he defined all the Scottish Rite degrees and kind of organized them. And he's a big philosopher in the Masonic tradition, you know, and a major step in the ladder of progress as a human being, you know, and from that, I mean, there's tons of other stuff that people have written as well about Masonry and the ideology behind it and all that. It's very attractive and very impressive. You've only got as far as 1860. Did he believe the South would become more agrarian? Yeah, essentially that was the premise, was that they were the seat of industry and the North was just trading with England. So he didn't trust that it would stay that way. A lot of some of the Southern Confederate generals made the argument that the North just trades with English, and what if we stick together, and then ultimately they use their Constitution and go back on it and fight. There was like this big debate about, you know, whether the North could be trusted because they didn't make anything, they just traded, whereas we make everything, and therefore we have a financial route that can protect us, you know. So. Yeah. So yeah, and I like long books, obviously, and this one reads. It's in degrees. It's literally a breakdown of every single degree in the Masons and the Scottish Rite. So it doesn't cover the York Rite or any of that other stuff, but it goes through apprentice, fellowcraft, master, secret master, perfect master, intimate secretary, provost and judge, intendant of the building, elect of the 9, illustrious elect of the 15. These are all the degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The Royal Ark of Solomon, the Grand Elect, Perfect and Sublime Mason, the Knight of the East or of the Sword, Prince of Jerusalem, the Knight of the East and West, Knight Rose-Croix, Grand Pontiff, Grand Master of all Symbolic Lodges, Noahite or a Prussian Knight, Knight of the Royal Axe, Chief Tabernacle, Prince of the Tabernacle, Knight of the Brazen Serpent, Prince of the Mercy, Scottish Trinitarian, Knight Commander of the Temple, Knight of the Sun, Scottish Knight of St. Andrew, the Knights Kadosh, the Grand Inspector, Inquisitor, Commander, and the Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret, which is the top, the 32nd degree. And they're all fascinating. The Industrial Revolution and the American began in New England. What does it mean? We were only traders. That was after, though. This is pre-industrial revolution, the Civil War. The Civil War was really about agricultural trade, tobacco and cotton and tea, and they looked at themselves as the food producers. By the way, it doesn't mean they're right. It's just how they perceived themselves. The Industrial Revolution was a secondary effect and didn't really come into full swing until certainly after the Civil War. Hi, Jude. Actually, the last philosophy was Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. That's good. I've read the Tao Te Ching as well, and if you're a science nut, the Tao of Physics compares a lot of the stuff that's in the Tao Te Ching and Zen Buddhists' philosophy with the equations that they find in quantum physics. Pretty great. After the Civil War, we discovered this thing called oil. Exactly right. Now I'm an oil man, and this is my boy, and I travel around and I drink your milkshake. Right? Aren't you taking your life in your hands by revealing all secrets? I'm not revealing any secrets. I haven't revealed a single secret. This is all the stuff that I've mentioned is public knowledge. I will not reveal any of the secrets, or hidden elements of Masonry. I will not. Texas tea, black gold. Thanks for the info, Hal. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, please do. Yeah, nothing that I've mentioned is not already public knowledge, and none of it is even the the hidden stuff that's on the internet. Is crap. A lot of it is made up. A lot of it is false. I'm not buying this revisionist history. No, I'm not saying that the majority of even those people believe that. I'm saying that this was the argument against the North that the abolitionists believe. And that's why these guys go, it wasn't about slavery, because for 4 people it was. It wasn't. The rest of them it was. If you're a woman, join the ancient Freemasons. The EOS gets me bored. I'm not a Christian, right? No. Yeah, the lizard people are here, but they have nothing to do with Mason. Val says From Hell is a secret documentary. We're in trouble, right? No, it's They Live is the documentary about us, right? Well, then, is it dangerous to reveal actual secrets? No, it's not dangerous. You just, on the one hand, you violate your oath and you'll be kicked out. On the other hand, too, you violate your own morals because you made a promise and you are breaking it. I would not reveal secrets, not because I'm afraid to reveal secrets, is because I made a promise not to, and I'm going to keep that promise because it's the right thing to do. If you want to learn, you can just join, go through it. And that's why one of the things that makes it a binding fraternity is we've all been through the same thing. We've all been through the same study and the same testing and the same, all the elements that are as well, So that's why it's a brotherhood, is because we've all experienced the same thing. Was Rowdy Piper a Mason? No, he was not. Sunglasses will not make you a Mason. Morally bankrupt if you break a promise. That's exactly right. So anybody who says, I was a 32nd degree Mason, this is really what goes on, or whatever, you have to understand that person is wholly untrustworthy. They're selling something. They lied to everybody in their lodge for years, and what would be trustworthy about them now? It's like any classified information. You can't reveal it. Absolutely. And there's value to that, All aliens and temporal existence. That's right. Just make sure Evernum knows what's up. You guys are awesome. This is again. I have a feeling, just because of the nature of the secrecy of the Masonic rituals and the ideas and some of the symbols and lessons of it, that there's always going to be questions and stuff. And I'm glad to answer as much as I can. But a lot of the secrets, quite frankly, came in the same way that a lot of Hillary supporters wanted to be in that secret Facebook group. They weren't ashamed of what they believed. They just knew that if people knew what they believed or what they were pushing for, they'd be attacked for it. You know? And there's been a long history of Masons being killed by religious fanatics because we're too nice, we're too inclusive. And it goes against the idea of if you're selling a single deity, and you're saying, yeah, your version of God is fine, your version of God is fine, your version of God is fine. Like, somebody's going to get mad and shoot you for that, or burn you at the stake, which is what happened a lot. But, you know, Masons are still smarting a little from, you know, the year 1616 to the year 1670, you know. Secret Facebook group, I've not heard of that. Yeah, there was remember the Hillary group? There was a Hillary group on Facebook. Because they were worried about trolls and people threatening them and that kind of stuff. How to evaluate evidence and doing research. Right. Oh, wow, Carl, I'm surprised you didn't know about it. It was pretty amazing. Are there polytheistic religions viewed by Masonry? Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of respect for both pagan and Egyptian religious beliefs or whatever, which are all polytheistic. There's a lot of Indian and like East Indian Masons, which is a polytheistic group, you know, religion in many ways. I mean, there's primaries, but there's Buddhists as well. It was scary if people could see me in there. Right. Well, it was a place to be free, to be yourself, you know. Yeah. From India, right? There's Indonesian. There's a lot of Indonesian Masons. I met this kid, and his son was in what's called DMLA, which is like Boy Scouts for Masons, you know, like for sons to be in. And I was in a restaurant in New York City. I was wearing a Mason's necklace, and these kids were so excited because they were both in DMLA. And they're like, we're from Indonesia, and our father is is a Mason, and we're both in DMLA, and we love it. But it was really nice. They ended up giving me my food for free. It was sweet. They're like, here, you should try this too. You know, they were awesome. Yeah, Vishnu is the singular god, but all the other ones, denote respect. It is definitely a polytheistic. I remember DMLA. I had friends who were in it. Yeah, there's the Job's Daughters, or the I think the Rainbow Girls, which is the female, like the Girl Scouts version, and then there's the DMLA, or the DMLA for boys. All Right Catholics, in his book Building a Bridge, advocating for respectful dialogue with LGBT built by the Catholics. It's great. That's awesome. Terrific. And people used to catch hell for that. And so the Masons formed and speak in secret and have, secret gatherings. But we don't talk politics or religion in the lodge. That's the irony of it, is that you literally leave it outside. You just don't talk about it. Am I going to? Oh, yes. Those should have all gone out. If they haven't, then you're in the next round. So keep you posted. And if you come to a show, or you're going to come to a show too, let me know, and I'll give you one, and we'll, in person too. That can also work. Let's see, the popular attacking versus Bernie Bros. Yeah, a lot of them. I think a lot of the attacking Bernie Bros, I'm starting to believe, are largely bots, anyways. Because I think a lot of Bernie's real supporters wouldn't be that vicious towards Hillary. Some of them are. They certainly exist, but the majority of them, I think, are Macedonian, and it's BS. Yeah. When am I coming to New England? I don't quite know. Orange County coming anytime soon? Probably. I'll probably do the Improv in Irvine fairly soon. I want to do a single night there. We had one on the books, and I had to move it. Yeah. The ritual of Chud in the novel It is based on the Buddhist act of Chud. King spoke about it. That's awesome. We will call it, we do the ritual of Chud every time we see her, which is we try to pet her so she starts purring. That's the ritual of Chud. Remember the Irvine cancellation? That was disappointing. I know, it was annoying. See, you're in Philly, wrong time for me at Christmas, yeah. Yeah, Chicago, we're looking for a better venue because it's either the Zanies, which is too small. There's that upstairs theater at Second City I'm thinking of using. Yeah. Yeah, if you haven't got your patch yet, it certainly helps to send me your address again just to make sure, because I wasn't in charge of sending the batch out, but I can organize them and make sure that they were sent again. So, yeah, DC area. Yeah, I'm doing that Maryland theater. It's a drive though. It's like an hour and a half from DC. The Maryland theater show is October 20th. And yeah. But that's a theater. That's a one-nighter. That'll be a great show because I need to start being able to do more theaters because, yeah, it's Hagerstown, Maryland is where it is on the 20th. Yeah. How do we send our address or where? Oh, on the contact page on the website at howsparks.com, go there and put in the subject line, address or the word patch, because that's the search field for gathering them all. I'm not sure. If it got lost in there, I apologize. So if you do it and send it, yeah, go to the webpage and click contact, put it in there. But put in, like the word patch and address in the field so we can do an instant thing. So I'm sending it twice again because I don't know which email is correct. Okay. It's just I think it's bookhal at iCloud, but that I think that's how it goes through. But it's at the website. So just go to howsparks.com and send it there. Let's see, I live down the street from Second City. Al, do you want me to do a recon mission? Absolutely, Carrie. Find out if just look on their posters and see if they have stand-ups performing at the upstairs theater, because after the fire it was shut down for a while. If there is, then I might just do a buyout. I'll pay for I'll rent it like a hall and put on my own show. Would be the easiest way for me to do it. You could always play in your garage. That's true. We could do garage shows. I'm not against it. Best concert I saw was in the Warfield in San Francisco. Oh, yeah. That was a good time. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, Carl. Cool. All right. I'm going to run. It's almost 2:30. All right. My time. So I got to run. Be well. Thank you guys for joining in today. Again, if you ever have questions about the masonry stuff, whatever, ask me on Twitter. I'm glad to tell you. If you're a male who's a decent human being who believes in any kind of a higher power, you're able to join in. I don't know how many my followers aren't madmen or fools, but if you're interested at all and you have questions about it, I'm glad to answer them. And I recommend it very highly. I think it would do wonders for our modern civil discourse again. So, anyways, but you guys are awesome. I adore you guys, and thank you so much for being with me every week. And thanks to everybody who super chatted. And we'll see you next time. And be safe and have fun. And I'll be periscoping tomorrow from the Science Center over here. So you can kind of walk along with me. That'll be fun. So, all right, take care of yourself. Bye.